Do aliens exist? Even so, does the government know? What's the story behind them? Where did the human race come from? Is it a possibility that we were created from aliens? The origin of the human race has been a topic for years. People share different opinions. From the literal biblical perspective, faith-based people believe that the human race is created in an instant by a creator. However, people in the scientific community believe that the human race came from pure evolution. We can't say that these two theories don't hold truths. However, there is a possibility that a more intelligent life played a big role in creating the human race, developing our DNA. The world and the human race hold many secrets. One of them is aliens. You might laugh and not believe that aliens have played a role in our evolution. As we unravel mysteries from our past, more and more, we, the human race, have made some of the most remarkable discoveries that are discussed in the scientific community. Have you ever heard about this? What do you think? Do you believe that our genetic makeup has to be more than the luck of the draw? What is the story of our DNA? If exquisitely extraordinary things were created, there had to be an artist involved, just like our DNA. The physicists at the National University of Kazakhstan 2013 noted something that changed everything: the perspective of our human race. They claim that the mathematical code inside our DNA is so sophisticated. It is so sophisticated that it can't be explained. Would it make sense to say that this could have been designed from a very intelligent life form? The research was published in the science journal Icarus that had noted that our DNA had perfectly ordered patterns of ideographs. Our DNA uses symbols to express physical concepts. These are similar to how we use them to convey language. It is like finding one of the most beautiful and multicolored mandalas made of sand. How could we assume that this was somehow created randomly by nature? The physicists have suggested that our DNA coding has remained unchanged since our creation. It is believed that it's like a file cabinet to preserve human design. Kazakhstan physicists think that the code of our DNA contains a kind of a receiver, like an extraterrestrial satellite dish. Its function is to detect the intelligence that designed it, a biological CD. It suggests that our bodies are receptive to the presence of extraterrestrial life. In 1977, CD received an unknown radio signal from space. It was a mysterious wow. However, our bodies were suggested to wait for those creators' signs. When we get the signal, our biology will know. CD expanded its scopes from receiving radio waves to including our body's name receivers. It is essential to note the evidence of directed panspermia. DNA used in genetic engineering was sent into space from Sweden on the exterior of a rocket. What happened when it returned? When returned, a small microscopic sphere was made of titanium and vanadium. It was about the width of human hair and had come from the space itself. It had threads of life on the outside of it. It also contained a gooey substance with some biological life shooting out from its center. Even though this particle returned to Earth after 1000 Celsius, there was still harbored life. Some researchers from the team at the University of Buckingham speculated that biological material contained genetic material. Where did this come from? They had no idea. However, some had noted that it was evidence of something that was called by intelligent life forms. This, perhaps, would probably never even have been taken seriously. However, it was suggested by Francis Crick, who was the Nobel Prize recipient for DNA research. Francis Crick spoke out relentlessly against the closed minds in the scientific community. Some other scientists believed that it must have been the intention of a more sinister purpose, engineered with a life-threatening virus sent to Earth. However, it had all the signs of having been shipped intentionally. Its discovery dampened the knee-jerk reaction toward the possibility that the alien life engaged in developing our human race. Another essential issue to talk about is the Rh-negative blood. What about it? We all have learned about the blood types in high school. We know that it is normal to have different kinds of blood. However, something extraordinary will happen if a woman with Rh-negative blood gets pregnant with an Rh-positive baby. The woman's body will produce antigens telling her immune system that her fetus is toxic. Then, what will happen next? Surprisingly, the woman's body will kill her own child. Is this normal? Does this happen even with the animals? No. There are no other instances of this kind of self-destruction biologically. It is believed that the Rh-negative blood is simply a mutation. However, others think it may have come from an alien species interbred with humans. It is engineered to produce a hybrid. Interestingly, only 15% of the world's population has Rh-negative. However, even more, Interesting is that this population percentage is not spread evenly across the globe. The highest 40% of Rh-negative blood was found somewhere in a particular place. They were found in the Basque region between France and Spain. Another interesting, weird fact is that the Basque people are the only ones in Western Europe who speak an indigenous Indo-European language. A language that is not spoken anywhere else in Europe. It is not isolated, but it's utterly unrelated to any other European language. What are other facts about people that have Rh-negative blood? People with Rh-negative blood are more likely to experience psychic phenomena and alien abductions. Other facts about people with Rh-negative blood are that they have a high IQ, elevated intuition, lower body temperature, and higher blood pressure. They are believed to have red hair and sensitivity to sunlight. Sometimes the people that have Rh-negative blood have extra vertebrae. However, there is no rational explanation of why the overpowering instinct to procreate a pregnant woman's body would destroy its creation. Is it possible that nature endured some tampering? Here comes the theory of the Big Bang of the brain. In 2004, the researchers at Chicago University noted the results of a long-term study that concluded the sophistication of the human brain. It had been said that the human brain couldn't have been a slow evolution. It had to be the result of a dramatic and fast change. Many say that some special event occurred around 50,000 years ago. This event explained how the human culture went from primitive cave drawings to sophisticated civilizations. This whole event was called the Big Bang of the brain. During that time, the human brain was separated into two hemispheres. We could think abstractly. The changes in the cognitive and physical structure were extensive. Many elements were changed, including a unique gene called the FOX protein 2. This gene was responsible for language and our ability to speak. All of the animals have had it too. However, it was changed to make humans able to communicate and think abstractly. However, the most exciting fact is that this happened simultaneously as the cave cravings occurred. What kind of cave cravings were there during that time? History shows that there were cave cravings of creator gods that looked non-human and alien-like. Another interesting fact is that the Neanderthal men mysteriously became extinct around 40,000 years ago. This makes us believe that an alien must have interference. That makes so much more sense than saying that a random mutation occurred and man evolved overnight from ape. Here comes the theory of still missing. The missing link. This theory was the most accepted theory on the evolution of man. Darwin created this theory. What does it say? Darwin said that the human race had evolved from apes over a million years ago. He noted that our intellectual abilities were driven into existence by natural selection. Darwin believes that when our ancestors began to walk on 2 feet, they also began using their hands to make different tools. However, it makes us question. If evolution happens slowly, there should be slight changes after some time, not immediately. Is there any evidence? It is believed that 6 million years ago, many creatures, such as apes, began to stand upright and walk on feet. You might think and believe that many significant, better changes occurred after this. But, no. Not a single change took place for a whole 4 million years. However, according to fossil records, these species began to make stone tools after that million years. But the changes were so slow. They stopped here. No advances were made for almost 2 million years. Then, 200,000 years ago, Homo sapiens, known as us, appeared. It would be best to think that they emerged and were advanced, but they appeared with no change. The evolutionary charts often mislead us. However, the charts show us the evolution of man without revealing what has been discovered. Then, if we look at the actual fossils, we can see that there are no transition species from ape-like creatures. However, today we can find more recent fossils than the ancient ones. Worth mentioning is the famous Lucy, who dates back nearly 3 million years ago. It makes us question. Where are the recent transitions? Where is the missing link? Why haven't alligators changed a bit? Alligators hadn't changed in at least 65 million years. Is it possible that the missing link is missing? Is it possible that it doesn't exist? Is there a possibility that a genetic modification had been done by a more advanced life form responsible for the leap in our intelligence? This theory could explain why there are so many different races or versions of humans in only a few 100,000 years. Let's move on to a different topic. A theory called our shared ancestor. Even beyond. What is the idea behind this? It was written in the Hebrew Bible in the book of Genesis. It was said that Eve was created from the rib of Adam and was given the breath of life. However, We have recently reached more accurate technologies to measure our genes. Studies have shown us profound insight into our ancestry. We have been told that there is evidence that any human can be traced. Our lineage comes back to a single common female ancestor of African origin. This woman is believed to have lived around 200,000 years ago. The studies measure variations of mitochondrial DNA against the average rate of mutation from entirely African, and the other contains all races of the world. However, there aren't any physical remains of this Eve. Even though there aren't any remains, her existence has been confirmed. However, it is believed that the genes of mitochondrial Eve weren't the first. It wasn't the only woman on Earth. An event occurred while she was alive, a cataclysmic event where the human population was reduced massively. This created a genetic bottleneck. However, humans evolved with two entirely different paths that remain unexplained. It makes us wonder. How was it possible that many races suddenly evolved within such a short period? Methods of determining genetics had already answered a lot of essential questions. These methods made it possible for Pandora's box to get opened. A professor that went to Harvard had noted that ancient DNA is expensive. Why is ancient DNA expensive? The reason might be that so little of ancient DNA is human. Then, it makes us question, what is it, since it isn't human? Let's welcome another theory called the double helix in ancient carvings. We all know that everywhere you go, there are cryptic carvings that show countless numbers of strange giant hybrid humans or other creatures on every continent. These creatures are portrayed as the sky or inner earth. Some of them are even described as creators of man if these were simply folklore. How do we explain the images of the double helix that is also in these ancient pictures and carvings? What is the story behind the double helix? One of the earliest pictures of a double helix dates back to 7,000 years ago. It was carved on a sizable 6-foot round stone. You might say that the double helix image was coincidental. However, how do we explain the idea that the double helix was carved in a rock shaped like an egg? It's exciting knowing that the egg symbolizes fertility and reproduction. However, those pieces of evidence are not the only ones found. Another double helix image was found in Sumerian pictographs from 4500 BC. It's weird knowing that the double helix wasn't even discovered during that time. The double helix wasn't found until the 1960s. It seems like the one who had craved it and drawn it knew its role. The double helix symbol is called the caduceus, in which there are two serpents intertwined in a perfect presentation of how our DNA coils. There were also some wings in every crave of drawings of the double helix. What could wings mean? DNA doesn't fly. Is it just a coincidence that those wings also appeared on the creator god depicted in ancient Sumerian? Or is it that the wings also depict its source? The symbol of the caduceus is often misused. It is often used as a symbol for medical practice. It is confused with the traditional medical called rod of Asclepius. This symbol has only one snake and has never been used with wings. In ancient Greece, the caduceus represented Hermes, then later, the same god by the Roman name Mercury. All of the undertakings were associated with that god. The responsibilities were alchemy, the transformation of matter, commerce, meeting business ends, and death. According to the Sumerian tablets, these undertakings were called Anunnaki. What stories do the Sumerian tablets hold? These tablets tell stories about creator gods who were descended from heaven to earth. It is believed that they genetically transformed existing hominids, the Neanderthal, for their commerce. Another topic worth mentioning is the evidence of a destroyed planet. If you think there isn't a possibility of alien life, we must note a few things about our solar system and the life that it may have existed. Had the other planets had habitable environments? A famous German astronomer, Johann Titius, noted a mathematical pattern in the layout of the planets. Johann Titius predicted the existence of another planet between Mars and Jupiter. The astronomers wanted to find the possibility of a new life. However, they didn't find a planet. They found something else. They found pieces of a world. That area is known as our solar system's asteroid belt. This planet was called Phaethon, after the offspring of the sun god, Helios, who was Greek mythology. However, many legends claim that there was a planet in our solar system called Maldek. What does the legend say about this planet? The legend says that its inhabitants destroyed this planet. However, it is said that some of the inhabitants managed to escape the planet and colonize Earth. But there is a question. Why the otherwise perfectly? The mathematical pattern of our solar system has a vacancy? Another critical topic is the evidence of nuclear destruction on Mars. If the planet of Maldek wasn't home to aliens, then another planet might have been. Today, we know that Mars has vegetation and even water. NASA has known about this for some time. However, Mars has a very high concentration of the gas isotope called xenon-129. What is xenon-129? Xenon-129 is radioactive. It doesn't occur naturally. It was a result of a nuclear explosion. 1.7 billion years ago, a nuclear reaction took place on Mars. Then, the head of the United States Atomic Energy Commission, Dr. Glenn Seaborg, won a Nobel Prize. He was prized for his work in the synthesis of heavy elements. He had said that there was no way that a nuclear reaction could have happened on Mars. If the reactions weren't natural, then it makes us think that the implication of intelligent beings caused them. However, there is one fact left that is worth mentioning. The first public debut of synthetic DNA was in 1967. The published discoveries are years behind where technology has gone. We can compare the Morse code to a cell phone or the first camera to the telescope. This way, we could see how our technology has changed in just a few decades. So, how do we know what is happening behind the closed door with the manipulation of DNA?
If history has been so picked apart over time, will we ever be able to know our whole story? What is human history? Human history is a record of the victors, purpose, and power. The agricultural revolution and evolution are at least vaguely familiar with these concepts. Is it really this simple? What if the stories of the giants, disasters, gods, angels, and ancients are more literal than they seem at first glance? If we look closer, our history might be revealed. It is a story that upends conventional knowledge and the history of power. It's an alternative history. A history that has been censored from human understanding. It has been mostly forgotten or ignored until now. A group of teenagers had found something, not knowing that they had made a historic discovery. It all started in early 1946, West Bank, when a group of Bedouin teenagers tended to their sheep and goats near the ancient settlement of Qumran. The teenagers were bored, and to pass the time, they began to throw rocks that they found across the rugged desert terrain. However, when one rock was thrown into the dark expanse of a cave, it made a very loud shattering noise echoing from within. The teenagers were surprised and wanted to see what was inside of it. They went inside the cave, exploring the place around, when they came across a collection of large clay jars. One of the large clay jars had been broken. Inside the jars, there were a series of ancient rolls. Then, years later, of discoveries, treasure hunters, historians, and archaeologists found additional scroll fragments in 10 other caves in that area. Over 800 and 900 manuscripts were collectively known as the Dead Sea Scrolls. Together with those manuscripts, there were large portions of a mysterious non-canonical religious text which had been forgotten. This was called the Book of Enoch. The Book of Enoch is made up of 5 books: the Book of Watchers, Book of Parables, the Astronomical Book, the Dream Visions, and the Epistles of Enoch. All of these contained 100 chapters. What stories do these books have? The books tell the story of Enoch, the 7th patriarch in the Book of Genesis. Enoch was the father of Methuselah and grandfather of Noah. You might wonder which Noah we're talking about. The same Noah that was in the biblical story of Noah's Ark. However, this was not the story about Noah's Ark. The Book of Enoch provides an entirely different recounting of the events that lead up to the great flood of Noah's time. This is an entirely different doctrinal history. It is a story about the Watchers. What are the Watchers? What is the story behind them? Watchers are explained in biblical terms as fallen angels sent to earth to watch over humans. These stories were written at some undefined and ancient point in time. Far from merely watching humans, these watchers, the fallen angels, became captivated by human women. They began to engage in depraved sexual acts with them. Then, children got born. Interbreeding between watchers and humans, the Nephilim, took place. Did the book say anything about how the Nephilim were? They were described as giants and savages that endangered and pillaged humanity. They were supernatural and were described as man-eating giants. The gods were angry about what the Watchers had done, so they decided to do something. They chained them in an underground prison within the earth. Enoch was between the gods and the imprisoned Watchers. This book describes the journey of Enoch between heaven and earth. His role was as an intermediary, and it tells how he flew with the angels and saw the rivers and mountains and the very ends of the earth from above. Even though Enoch had intervened, the gods still decided the atrocity that the earth had become must be punished. The punishment was a flood. This punishment would destroy the Nephilim and cement the watchers in their prison. What is said that would happen to Enoch? Enoch would be whisked away to heaven in a fiery chariot. The book of Genesis, which also tells the Great Flood in Abrahamic traditions, also references the Nephilim in chapter 6. It references the Nephilim as heroes that were old and warriors of renown. However, this is not the only place in the biblical canon in which the Nephilim appear. It is believed that the Israelites visited a land that Nephilim inhabited. The Nephilim were so giant and extensive that they made the Israelites look like grasshoppers. However, many things in modern times are seen as symbolic, that is, more philosophical myth than historical record. But there is evidence of a great flood in the earth's past. It is incidentally spoken in countless religious and cultural traditions across the world. It makes us question, has beings like the Nephilim giants actually existed on Earth? There is a lot of evidence and a dozen stories of enormous skeletons found unearthed across North America. Many newspaper articles suggest that the giants existed together with early humans. However, this is not a phenomenon that only occurred in the United States. Enormous skeletons have also been found in the Amazon rainforest and Africa. Stories of giants permeate human history and tradition. Marco Polo, a very famous explorer, wrote about a race of giants in Zanzibar. Marco Polo had described them as so strong that they could carry as many as 4 ordinary men. However, the people of modern-day Tangier, Morocco, used to claim that their city's giant was named Antaeus. The Irish myth claims that the so-called Giant's Causeway off the northeast coast of Ireland had astonished 40,000 interlocking columns of rock. It was believed that the Irish giant Finn McCool had made these columns of stones so he could walk across the sea to Scotland just to fight another giant. There are stories of giants. Norse legends and ancient Greek mythology too. It makes us wonder if giants did exist, as these records across countless cultures claim, then the Book of Enoch is less symbolic than it might appear. It is a less fantastical myth and more grounded in actual history. For centuries, the Book of Enoch is a big part of both Christian and Jewish religious traditions. Many have accepted the Book of Enoch as scripture. Many also have suggested that the Book of Enoch was the inspiration for the Book of Genesis. The suggestion had come due to their many parallels and overlapping stories. However, the most critical question is, what had happened? Why is the Book of Enoch not part of the Bible? To answer this complicated question, we must go back to the early centuries after the death of Jesus Christ. We must go far from the rigid canon of 39 Old Testament and 27 New Testament books that now are known as the Bible. The broad spectrum of Christian tradition consisted of numerous gospels and religious texts. After the death of Jesus, the Christian religion seemed to grow. Then, the burgeoning Christian church needed to know which texts should be read and followed, and which teachings should be applied. The church needed to create uniformity. The church needed an official canon. The story popularized in modern times, the Da Vinci Code, by Dan Brown's seminal work, is remembered as happening at the Council of Nicaea in the 4th century. It was said that Emperor Constantine and other high-ranking church authorities shaped the Christian canon to conform to their secret agenda. However, this is not accurate. The Council of Nicaea did not determine the official Christian doctrine. Dan Brown is not the one to blame. A famous philosopher, Voltaire, made the same assertion. The whole story might not be factually accurate, but it is correct in a sense. The church members that were high-ranking did pick and choose what to include in the official biblical canon. They cast their opponents as heretics, argued and pulled strings, and sought to expand their power. It didn't take place at a single council. It was a very long process between the 1st and the 4th centuries. However, the process was complete by the end of the 4th century. Then, the Bible was officially set. However, the Bible was sent, but without the Book of Enoch. It makes us question, how come something as influential as the Book of Enoch is left out? Firstly, we must examine other Gospels which were also censored from the final product. It is worth mentioning the Gospel of Peter, a fragment found in Egypt in 1886. This fragment tells the long-missing story of a resurrected Jesus leaving his tomb. This story features 2 gigantic angels and a floating cross that talks. It was said that they heard a voice from the heavens, saying, "Thou hast preached to them that sleep." A response was heard from the cross, saying, "Yea." It is also worth mentioning the Gospel of Mary. Mary Magdalene was named not only as one of Jesus' disciples, but his favorite one, even as his wife. The story tells how the disciple Peter asks about how he and the others must listen to Mary. Matthew had responded by saying, "If the Savior made her worthy, who are you then, for your part, to cast her aside? Surely the Savior knows her full well. That is why he has loved her more than us." These Gospels tell extraordinary and history-challenging stories indeed. Should it be a no surprise that these texts were also censored by the early power brokers of the official Christian canon? There is a possibility that the Book of Enoch has been forgotten. The pre-modern version of the text was written in Ge'ez, which was an ancient African language. It was the version that Richard Lawrence, the Archbishop of Cashel, used in 1821 to produce the first ever English translation of the book. This version is used to inform the studies of the Dead Sea Scrolls. Even though the Book of Enoch was omitted from the established Christian canon and forgotten, there are still references to the Nephilim in Genesis and Numbers. There is also an extensive recounting of Enoch's lineage in Genesis. The Book of Hebrews also talked about Enoch and how God had taken him away. It referenced Enoch being taken to heaven by the fiery chariot before the great flood. In Jude, an entire paragraph is transcribed word for word from Enoch, claiming that the book may have served as an early inspiration for canonical biblical texts. Corinthians 11:5-6 contains instructions from St. Paul saying that the women should cover their heads while in church. This reference seemed like a direct reference to the fact that the watchers in the Book of Enoch were attracted to women with long hair. However, this practice remains in Roman Catholicism and Islam in the modern days. Even though the Book of Enoch was censored or forgotten, it never truly disappeared. However, the story behind the Book of Enoch is something even more profound. Its extraordinary stories go beyond simply whether or not it is part of the Christian canon. It had been said that Enoch, the seventh patriarch of the Bible, reflects the seventh antediluvian king, in Menjarana, in Babylonian tradition. Enoch was believed to be the same as the god Hermes by the ancient Greeks. However, the ancient Egyptians had someone similar in their tradition too. There are a lot of examples. However, it makes us question why does Enoch, no matter his name, keeps appearing in the traditions of the ancients. This is a highly complex question, and the answer might go back further than the Egyptians, Greeks, or even the Babylonians. Sumerian texts had noted that the earth was visited by a group of supernatural beings in the past. It was said that these visitors are described in a very similar way to the descriptions of the Watchers in the Book of Enoch. As called in the Book of Enoch, the Watchers in Sumerian's texts were named differently. They call these beings the Anunnaki. Anunnaki means those who came from the heavens. These beings were gods to the Sumerians. However, to the modern thinkers like Erich von Däniken and Zacharias Sitchin, they were an ancient race of aliens who came to Earth. What's interesting about this is that the Sumerian texts tell stories of these Anunnaki precisely like the story of the Watchers noted in the Book of Enoch. The story is also about the beginning, to interbreed with human beings, creating an entirely new species and reflecting the creation of the Nephilim. Precisely like the gods of the Book of Enoch, even the Anunnaki became angry with the earth's condition and brought a great flood. It makes us think that there is a possibility that the Book of Enoch, as well as the other related traditions, are retelling the older Sumerian story of the Anunnaki. It is worth mentioning the agricultural revolution, which began around 10,000 BCE. What happened during this time? During this time, human beings transitioned from a lifestyle of hunting and gathering to one of agriculture and settlement. Based on the historical record, the earliest 9500 BCE, in Kurdistan, in what now is modern, wheat began to get cultivated. Peas, oats, and lentils grew, while goats and sheep were domesticated. Then, 500 years later, people were making pottery, copper, and lead smelting. However, this ancient Kurdish culture was the first one to develop a script suddenly. This script is known as one of humanity's earliest literate societies. How is this possible for human beings to jump this fast? To evolve dramatically? Another interesting fact about this is that the Kurdish people claim to be the descendants of the children of the jinn. Or, in other words, the children of spirits. Was this an ancient cultural reference to procreation between Anunnaki and human women? Sumerians had noted that it was the Anunnaki the ones who had brought advanced knowledge and technology to human beings. Many have suggested that this explains the seemingly impossible monuments around the world, such as the pyramids of Giza or Teotihuacan. These are ancient monuments of extraordinary sophistication, which is completely unexplained by the cultural and social circumstances of the historical record. Is this also an explanation of how human beings could transition from nomadic hunter-gatherers to sophisticated civilizations? Since all of this happened in a historically insignificant amount of time, it is extraordinary how the Book of Enoch also describes an almost identical process. The story of how the Watchers had mirrored the Anunnaki in providing the humans with advanced knowledge and technology. It was said that they taught humans metallurgy, mining, science, and medicine. They have taught humans how to read, write, and even read the stars. They taught the humans to wear cosmetics and make jewelry. They also shared secrets of the art of war. There is a fragment in the Book of Enoch 8:1-3 that notes, "And Azazel taught men to make swords and knives and shields and breastplates, and made known to them the metals of the earth, and the art of working them and bracelets and ornaments, the use of antimony and the beautifying of the eyelids, all kinds of costly stones, and all coloring tinctures. And there were led astray and became corrupt in all their ways." This once again makes us wonder, was the Book of Enoch reflecting and retelling the story of the Anunnaki? Can we say that the Anunnaki helped the historical records completely unexplained phenomenons and social circumstances? Anunnaki must have indeed helped ancient humans with the pyramids of Egypt, right? An ancient Arabian historian named al-Makrizi noted that these pyramids were built by a king named Sord, who lived before the Great Flood. You might say all right, and not find anything weird about this. However, the name Sord translated into Hebrew means Enoch. What a coincidence, right? Here is another chapter taken from the Book of Enoch. "In those days mine eyes saw the secrets of the lighting and the lights, and the judgments they execute, and they lighten for a blessing or a curse, as the Lord of spirits willeth. And there I saw the secrets of the thunder, and how it resounds above in the heaven, the sound thereof is heard, and he caused me to see the judgments executed on the earth, whether they be for well-being and blessing, or a curse, according to the world of the Lord of spirits. And after that, all the secrets of the lights and lightning were shown to me, and they lighten for blessing and satisfying." Many have suggested that this chapter was meant to illuminate the riddles of energy and electricity. It relates directly to the Anunnaki, who have been trying to reveal similar secrets to the human being through crop circles. You might be familiar with how many crop circles have appeared across the world in the past few decades. Those crop circles contain complex mathematical equations, magnetic diagrams and motors, mechanical routers, and the field lines of an electrical charge. Many said that those are the work of Anunnaki. We must consider the description of Enoch's journey when he met the gods. We must keep in mind the UFO sightings that accompany these crop circles. Enoch had described that he was taken to a floating palace. He said that the place was huge, like carved glass. Enoch said that the floor had glass plates, and you could see the stars crossing through them. Many had wondered if the fiery chariot that took Enoch away was an alien spacecraft. It's hard to believe that stories as mind-blowing as those that permeated ancient cultures for thousands of years be largely forgotten. However, listening to those stories reshapes our human history and redefines what human beings are. Their exclusion is perhaps no surprise. Were these stories erased? Maybe not. Let's talk about the well-known biblical story of Adam and Eve and the Garden of Eden. However, we must read it metaphorically. It all starts when God creates Adam to watch over the earth, as the gods sent the watchers in the Book of Enoch. However, from Adam's rib, God creates Eve. Adam and Eve procreate, representing the interbreeding between the watchers and human females. Then, Adam and Eve are told that they could eat anything in the Garden of Eden. However, there was something that they couldn't eat: the fruit from the tree of knowledge of good and evil. Adam and Eve eat from the tree of knowledge, representing the watchers bringing advanced technology and ability to human beings. Were the human beings mentally evolved enough to handle it? The tree of knowledge provided Adam and Eve with the knowledge of God. The Book of Enoch describes how the watchers revealed the eternal secrets which were preserved for heaven, which means we are striving to learn. It is easy to see the parallels between the Book of Enoch and the story of Adam and Eve. Is it possible that the people who had told the story of Adam and Eve were simply retelling the story of the Book of Enoch? It makes us question our human history. Is human history that which is understood through officially sanctioned history books? Or is it something more profound, more incredible, if perhaps forgotten? Do you think the answer has been hiding in plain sight the whole time?
Imagine you're a scientist who discovers something new. Something that is never seen before. Something extraordinary. Inner Earth. A world on its own. Would you make this fantastic place untouched by the hands of the humans, public? Would you share it with the world? Will the human race destroy this inner Earth once they can get there? Would we treat it better than the Earth that we're living on currently? But most importantly, does this inner Earth truly exists? Before winter, millions of birds and insects fly toward the pole. Humans were curious about where these creatures go, so they made it possible to give them tracking devices. When these creatures were given tracking devices, they lost their tracking signal. Where did these creatures go? What happened to them? The most northerly point of land on Earth is somewhere just north of mainland Greenland. Here, the mosquitoes are huge and aggressive. We are used to them poking us, but they can take out a caribou calf in this place. Crazy, right? Another interesting fact is that the explorers at the South Pole have noted that the sub-zero temperature suddenly rises dramatically after a certain latitude, yielding green iceless land areas and lakes. This strange phenomenon tells us that the North and South Poles may hold secrets that we don't know. Across the North and South Poles, the most celebrated geologists and astronomers have believed that Earth is a spherical spacious planetary body, with enormous continent-sized caverns deep within it. They think that the inner Earth civilization exists. Geologists and astronomers note that the inner Earth has water, oceans, and luminosity. They said that the inner Earth sustains plants, animals, and even intelligent life. Do you believe so far? Don't worry, now you're going to witness the endless evidence that the legends, the scientists, and testimonies behind the theory of the inner Earth civilizations. This information will change your whole life and your perspective of it. Miles beneath your feet, a whole other world exists with ideal conditions for a life-sustaining and inhabitable inner Earth. Are you ready? Gravity is what makes an apple fall, right? That's what Isaac Newton defined it. We were taught this way. We have believed this for 400 years. However, in 2017, two neutron stars collided and proved that it's not a force. It's a distortion in spacetime. What did Einstein say about this? He believed that an apple falls from a tree because the apple is responding to a curvature of spacetime caused by the planet's mass. It was noted that a force called gravity doesn't exist. What a massive paradigm shift. So, if we have been wrong about gravity all this time, there is a possibility that we are wrong about other theories too. How do we measure Earth's mass? The Cavendish experiment, which was performed around 1797 to 1798, measures the mass of one object based on its tug to another. However, even before the redefining of gravity, this theory had its flaws. The gravitational conditions in a science lab are nothing like conditions in space. If gravity is no longer a valid theory, then it follows that the masses of all other planets in the solar system are also overstated. If the Earth is cavernous or hollow, so is every other planet in the solar system. Some of the most outstanding scientists have challenged the theory of dense Earth around the same time as Isaac Newton. Edmund Halley, the famous geophysicist, mathematician, and astronomer, predicted the orbit of his comet and said the Earth's magnetic anomalies could only be the result of a different composition. Edmund Halley believed that beneath the Earth's crust were two thick concentric shells and that each region potentially had its atmosphere. There is a video that NASA took showing Saturn's North Pole, and there we could see the exact counter-rotating fields that Halley described. There is also a rare video that NASA took of Jupiter's pole where you could easily see 15 of these counter-rotating cylinders. Halley had also noted that the poles would have access to Earth. The aurora borealis resulted from light emanating from this counter-rotation, as it does on the video on the other planets. A video of NASA shows the aurora borealis emanating from a dark point on the planet. If you overlay a map on the planet of where this point is, it's precisely at the end of the South Pole. Years later, Leonard Euler, who was considered one of the greatest mathematicians and physicists, proposed that Earth was hollow with a central sun in the center. This was similar to what Edmund Halley proposed, noting that the holes at the North and South Pole would provide access to it. Then, Johann Carl Friedrich Gauss, one of Germany's most influential mathematicians, noted in the 1800s, all of our Earth's history, physics and geography could be explained by the Earth being a hollow planet with entrances at the poles. However, you might think that the satellite images of the poles will disprove this craziness. But, here, things get weird. The thing is that NASA's pictures and videos of poles are tough to find. And, when they are revealed, it is evident in the photos that the poles of the Earth are covered with clouds or simply being blotted out. However, in November of 1968, a satellite photo of the North Pole was released. The photo showed a sizable polar opening. It's a possibility that the trick of time-based photography created this illusion. But then NASA began to reveal photos that made everyone wonder and question. Especially the one from the Russian space station in 1987, where it was showed light emanating in a very mysterious way. Then, there were other pictures of the planets from NASA, Venus, Jupiter, and the various moons showed strange qualities and pools. It makes you wonder, how is it possible to have perfect hexagonal angles on Saturn? Why do these images from space have their poles concealed? The blotted-out picture of Jupiter should be mentioned, where you could clearly see the light emanating from the center. Edgar Allan Poe once said, "Sometimes the best hiding place is the one that's in plain sight." Was he correct? Earthquakes are another way of measuring Earth's mass. In the early 1900s, seismograph readings proved that Earth has some density. What happens when an earthquake occurs? When an earthquake occurs, seismic waves are measurable as they spread. However, the signals disappear entirely, only to reappear further on. Some shadow zones are believed to result from waves hitting a molten core. There is complicated mathematics theorizing why. The waves may reverberate within a belt-like zone but disappear into large caverns or underground. Would this be an explanation that it's too simple? Is there more to it? Is there a possibility of inner oceans? Do you find the concept and the idea of inner oceans strange? Where were the first deepest drilled holes in the whole world? Russia. In 1970, the first deepest drilled hole was called Kola Super Deep Borehole. It took 20 years to make it. This left a few scientific theories in ruin. What did humans discover there? There was found unprecedented heat, fossils at depths 8 miles down, and then the surprising one, water. Water was found in deeper depths than had previously been assumed. Then, in 2014, with the help of seismic readings, U.S. geophysicists discovered large bodies of water 400 miles into the Earth. The geophysicists noted that the mantle transition zone, a rock layer between 400 and 700 kilometers below the Earth's surface, could hold 3 times the amount of water of the world's oceans. The team concluded that the depth of the Earth holds a lot of water. However, there are a lot of questions about this theory since modern science can't confirm the physical structure of Earth's interior. There are a lot of reasonable doubts. What is the best way to explain it? A forming planet with zero gravity in its center, its mass accumulates. A sphere is created with an opening at the top and bottom when the gravitational and centrifugal forces are balanced. Not like a solid body, but like a hurricane of matter in space. This energetic flow is a self-organizing system in nature. The energy expands and returns to itself. We see it every day. Where, you might ask? Well, simply in our oranges, whirlpool, or tornado. Everything is spinning. It's in the atom and the galaxy. So, let's discuss another possibility. Over the years, our planet has become a combination of forces responsible for shaping it: heating, cooling, convection carving by lava, running water, and glaciers. What about centrifugal forces? Centrifugal forces create inner spaces in a mass. It revolves on an axis. These forces are natural and could make a planet look like Swiss cheese or even honeycomb rather than a rock. So, the models of Earth's interior are theories. But, we can look at the facts that we already know. Every continent has extensive cavernous networks. Let's start with the Sun Dung Cave in Vietnam. It is the biggest cave on the planet when measured by cross-section. It was discovered and explored in the year of 2009. This cave has its own little world, with its jungles, rivers, and a space to fit a 40-story skyscraper. Then, we have Mammoth Cave in Kentucky, USA. It has rolling hills and deep river valleys. It is known as the world's longest known cave system. It is home to thousands of years of human history and rich plant and animal life diversity. Who is to say these breathtaking naturally occurring spaces are not found in the most profound depth of the earth? The law of physics says that empty spaces are unnatural. However, the caves have their ecosystem, water, plant life, and animal life. If they extend deep into the earth, it would still fit it. Because even in the most inhospitable ocean depths, life had been created, and creatures had adapted. Some creatures have adapted to the depths of the ocean's darkness by creating their luminosity. Aristotle once said, "Nature abhors a vacuum. If there is a void, the universe seeks to fill it." If we are prohibited from seeing the poles and exploring caves without permits or assigned guides, how might we know what exists on inner Earth? It is essential to look through history. Ancient culture shares legends about interactions with subterranean races. Some of these are considered to be purgatory for sinners. It's an attempt to deter people from doing wrong things. But there are also other legends. Legends about Agartha with its cities Shambhala and Patala. These legends have striking resemblances no matter the continent. In every civilization, there is the story of two beings. Two very tall beings. Giants or very advanced reptilian races. What does the word Agartha mean? Agartha is of Buddhist origin. Faithful Buddhists believe in this subterranean empire. They say that the empire has millions of inhabitants and many cities, including the capital Shambhala. There is a supreme ruler that lives there. It is believed that Dalai Lama is their terrestrial representative. Dalai Lama's messages are transmitted to the lamas in Tibet. They say they've been there for thousands of years since terrestrial cataclysms. And that they had sheltered humanity. Who is Nicholas Roerich? Nicholas Roerich was a Russian artist, philosopher, and explorer. He had noted that the Tibetan Lama revealed the capital of Tibet was connected by a tunnel with Shambhala, the heart of the underground empire of Agartha. It was said that the entrance of this tunnel was guarded by lamas who had promised to keep its actual whereabouts a secret from outsiders. The passage had traveled deep into the earth through difficult areas to pass. Tibetans had noted that Shambhala is a physical place and has an ethereal nature. It lies inside this holistic evolving planet. It makes us think of how matter can be warped in space and time by mass. Some say that the inner earth is a plane between spirit and our reality. It is an area where the ethers of spirit become nature, and nature returns to the spirit, making it an aberrational realm. There is an ancient epic poem called the Mahabharata. The Hindus used to speak of Aryavarta. It was said that it was ruled by a supernal race called the Nagas. The Nagas were half human and half reptile. It was said that the Nagas possessed cutting-edge technology and had an unpredictable nature known to abduct and torture humans. But, on the other hand, influencing positive events on Earth. It is said that they had inhabited Patala. What a coincidence! The name of the palace where the Lama guarded was called the Patala Palace. These whole happenings of events raised even more questions about the Chinese government's motivation. In the 1950s, the Chinese government violently overthrew Tiber's peaceful leaders in a coup. This had cost a lot of Tibetan lives. There is also another Indian epic, the Ramayana. It tells the story of the great avatar Rama. Rama was a blue-skinned emissary from Agartha. It was said that he had arrived in an air vehicle. What were these air vehicles? These air vehicles were called vimanas, which meant a car, or chariot, of the gods. The gods had carried their occupant through the air. These flying vehicles have been the strangest thing from all the inner Earth stories. It had remained consistent. However, the stories don't stop here. A similar tunnel was found and believed to connect the secret chambers at the base of the Pyramid of Giza with a subterranean in Africa. It is thought that the pharaohs contacted the gods of the underworld of ancient Egyptians. The gods had qualities unlike humans. They were unique. Their height was different, their skin tone, and even their eyes. Their head was bird-like. However, the mysteries continue. Another had occurred in 1985 AD. The famous Viking explorer, Eric the Red, came across something big. he discovered Greenland. The Vikings had begun to live there and create their own life. Their own place. However, after some time, the Vikings that had settled there were not seen anymore. Never again. They had abandoned Greenland. The villages were found abandoned. Where could they have gone? Their disappearance has become one of the most significant and solved mysteries in recent history. The native people of Greenland were asked. The Inuits. They had said that the Vikings had gone northwards to a place, a wonderland, that the natives had known. This place was called Endless Summer. The place was believed to be rich in vegetation and game. The Inuits had said that the colonists had gone to a land of eternal bliss inside the protective womb of the earth. What does that mean? In the womb of the earth? In Suffolk, England, in the 12th century, an unusual story began to take place. This story's still a part of the town's history. It was a story about the underworld. One day, in this town, their 2 kids were found. But not just any kids. The kids are believed to have had green skin and speak an unknown language. The kids had been starving when found, and they only craved beans. Raw beans. One of the kids, the boy, didn't make it, and he had passed away. But the girl had survived for a very long time. After some years, the girl could communicate with people, and she finally explained that she and her brother had come from a subterranean land, a land where the sun never shone. The girl said they got lost because they had followed their cattle into a cave, then eventually, they arrived at the land where the sun was shining. Then, in 1908, a book called The Smoky God, written by Willis George Emerson, came to light. A story about Olaf Jansson's fantastic journey to Agartha. It is a story about Olaf's years spent living together with his father. Olaf and his father traveled around on their fishing boat, wanting to find the land beyond the north. However, their plan didn't go as planned. A wind had occurred. The storm carried them through a polar opening into the interior of Europe. In this book, it was said that Olaf and his father met a race that was called the Elder. It was noted that that race of people was friendly, intelligent, and much more. This race was 12 feet tall. They were giants. But, this group of people could grow even taller in the electrical energy field that they were living in. They were able to live for 800 years. Olaf had described the inner earth, saying it was warm and rained once a day. Olaf had noted that the atmosphere was tense. But why was the book called that way, The Smoky God? The title refers to the inner world glowing. But, the most exciting part and topic of this book were that there were flying vehicles mentioned. Olaf had ridden a fast, noiseless object. Olaf had said that the vehicle had revolving fan-like wheels that destroyed gravitation. It was noted that this force prevented them not to falling. It had been 2 years that Olaf and his father lived in this land and with these beings. Then, it was time for them to return through the opening. However, their journey home wasn't easy. Olaf had lost his father. His father had passed away because an iceberg had destroyed their boat. Their boat was damaged, and some fishermen saved Olaf. When Olaf returned home, he was very excited to tell him what had happened. But no one believed him. He got put in a madhouse because people thought he had lost his mind. Olaf was kept there for 28 years. However, in his 90s, he shared his journey. But, not alone. Olaf shared his story with the writer Willis George Emerson. Olaf had given him maps of the interior of the inner earth that he had spent 2 years in. In 1895, Fridtjof Nansen, a Nobel Prize laureate and Norwegian explorer, decided to go out there and see if he could find the North Pole. He had set on an expedition to reach the mysterious land, but unfortunately, he couldn't find it on the maps given to him. However, many unusual things happened to him while he was on this journey. After a bitter cold, Fridtjof noted that the temperature began to rise and become unbearable suddenly. However, Nansen had never clarified where he was and what place this was. But one thing is essential. He was not in Kansas. However, in the depths of the jungle of Amazon, the ancient Maikusai Indians are where they live. They have remained isolated from an advanced civilization. It was believed that they were the guardians of an entrance to inner earth. These people had described their journey to the inner earth in detail. They had said that in order to get there, you must travel 15 days through caverns. It would be best to walk through the caverns until balls of lights and glowing discs appear. They had said that there is a civilization of very tall beings inside the inner earth. The beings there are 12 to 15 feet. They noted that this being lives inside of a lush ecosystem and vegetation. This primitive culture had also noted that these beings that live in the inner earth encounter molten rock at deep depths. Now it makes us question. How did this primitive culture isolated from advanced civilization know such details? Was their story true? After the First World War occurred, a German occultist ground founded the Thule Society. They wanted to pursue paranormal sciences. They had published Tibetan legends about openings into the earth, becoming obsessed with finding the entrances. They even visited Tibet. This group later created what was called the Nazis. It had grown in military superiority and geographical dominance. Then, Hitler ordered a team of researchers to go and find the inner earth that everybody was talking about and searching for. Hitler wanted to find inner earth opening in Antarctica. Then, after some time, a German U-boat, which Enrique Brodin commanded, had claimed that they had reached the Earth's interior. They had said that they loved it and didn't want to come back. They noted that the Earth is indeed hollow. Then, a German scientist drew a diagram of the Agartha in 1933, in corroboration with the U-boat. These stories were backed up by maps made for the National Geographic Society. However, Heinrich Barron, a famous cartographer, noted that Antarctica could be observed on that map without its thick layer of ice. The most interesting detail of this map was the underwater passageways. These underwater passageways spanned the entire continent. These appeared to converge at the exact location identified as the opening into the earth. But, there is some disturbing part of this story, of this legend. Hitler and many of his minions escaped Germany in World War II's closing days. Hitler had fled to Antarctica, hoping to find the Earth's interior. However, after the war was over, it was discovered that more than 2,000 scientists from Germany and Italy, among almost 1 million people, had vanished. According to the Hollow Earth Research, which is based in Canada, this entire culture still resides. Of course, they were not all Nazis. However, those guilty of heinous war crimes of high power will have to administer justice. The stories of the inner earth don't seem to have an end. This whole legend is not complete without the story of Rear Admiral Richard Byrd Jr. Rear Admiral Richard Byrd Jr. was an American aviator. He had led many expeditions to both poles. He had also written long, detailed stories about his journey. Why is Byrd's story unique from the others? What makes it stand out? The exciting part is that the personal diary of his son was published. In this document, there were vivid details about his expedition to the North Pole in 1947. Then, it was noted that he had been met by an unfamiliar flying craft that took control of his plane, and got token to the leader of that place. He had been taken to the leader of the master of the inner earth civilization. Before anyone starts assuming if this was true or not, we must tell more about Richard Byrd. We must know more about his behavior while he was alive and mostly about who he was. Richard Byrd was one of the most highly decorated officers in military history. Medal of Honor, the highest medal, was given to him by the United States. He had fought in both world wars. And also led huge military expeditions to the Antarctic. What it's interesting about him is that he had always kept detailed logs of his journeys. He had written everything about what he was explored and saw. Richard Byrd was not a poet or a storyteller. He had the responsibility for his words and action. When Richard Byrd was back from his journey, he was interviewed on live TV in 1954. The statements that he had said are, to this day, mysterious and confusing. Richard Byrd has said that he wanted to see the land beyond the pole. He didn't say around or near it. He said beyond. Richard Byrd called the inner earth the land of everlasting mystery. He called it the most peaceful place in the whole world. He noted that the inner earth is a vast new territory that wasn't on any map. He had said that the inner earth was more significant than the US and was never seen by a human being. Bird has said that the inner Earth was the most important and valuable place for scientists. He had repeated some words saying that it's the center of the great unknown. These are very confusing and mysterious when you get to think that he had been talking about a land covered in ice. How was this peaceful? Richard Byrd was sworn to secrecy. However, in February 1947, Byrd, the man who had done the most to make the North Pole an unknown area, made a statement. He had noted, "I would like to see the land beyond the pole. The center of the great unknown." Everyone had read about this in the newspaper or even heard about it on the radio. Have the people taken off their maps and looked at what was on the North Pole? What land is there that Byrd wants to see so bad? What was he talking about? If we calculate all the known lands near the North Pole, none of them are within 200 miles of the pole. Byrd should have seen nothing but lands covered with ice or ocean covered with ice, right? Yes, he should have this. But instead, Byrd saw something mysterious. He had said that he had flown over lush green areas. He had seen lakes and mountains. Byrd had published that he discovered 2 unknown lands. The unknown areas were measured for a total of 4,000 miles. Byrd should have received the notoriety of his journey, just like Christopher Columbus did, right? But, no, his story disappeared instead. In 1956, the editor of Flying Saucer magazine, Ray Palmer, wrote the detailed story of Byrd's journey. However, it mysteriously disappeared as soon as the press published the report. Why was his story disappearing? Was there something that the humans shouldn't have known? Did someone else want to take the credits? The printing plates were damaged, and a reprint couldn't be done. During this time, some books were published about pole entrancing. But, Byrd was accused of lying. Why would the first person that was to the North Pole lie? Another thing that Byrd noted was that the poles are concave, not convex. He had said that the South Pole is 10,000 feet high, but the North Pole is 10,000 feet low. However, one of the biggest mysteries would be that after World War II, the high jump operation occurred. It was said that at the time, it was an expedition to Antarctica to find coal and other resources. However, this story then changed. It changed to training the military and having a research base. Why would this mission require 33 aircraft, 13 Navy ships, and 5,000 soldiers? All of this resulted, unfortunately, in the loss of many lives. Later on, it was said that the true mission was to retrieve the missing Nazi leaders from their refuge in Antarctica. Byrd cut his mission short after the press reported troubles and many fatalities. When the military force returned, their journey became classified as top secret. However, inevitable leaks revealed that they were attacked by a highly advanced saucer-shaped airship. James Forrestal, the Secretary of the Navy, began to talk. Then, President Truman forced him to resign. James Forrestal was taken to the Bethesda Naval, a hospital psychiatric ward. He was prevented from seeing or talking to anyone there, including his own family and wife. Later he was found dead, saying that he had killed himself. This case was closed. However, in 1947, something strange happened again. Byrd had suddenly ended his military expedition. He then spoke with a reporter for the Chilean newspaper called El Mercurio. Byrd had told him that he didn't want to scare the people, but there was a bitter reality. He had said that if a new war took place, the continental U.S. would be attacked by flying objects. Byrd had noted that those flying objects would be able to fly from pole to pole and had an incredible speed. However, everything changes when Byrd dies, and then his son immediately publishes his diary. All of this time, Byrd had remained mysterious and silent. What was written in his journal was something that the public hadn't heard. Byrd had noted in his diary, "I must write this diary in secrecy and obscurity. It concerns my Arctic flight on the 19th day of February in 1947. There comes a time when the rationale of men must fade into insignificance, and one must accept the unavailability of the truth. I am not at liberty to disclose the following documentation in this writing. Perhaps it shall never see the light of public scrutiny, but I must do my duty here for all to read one day. Hopefully, the greed and exploitation of certain of humanity can no longer suppress that which is truth." Bird wrote that he had traveled 1,700 miles on his journey. He had noted how surprised he was when the ice below gave way to green forests, rivers, and mountains. Bird had witnessed animal life. He said that he had looked at a mammoth. Everything there was unique and different from the Earth we currently live in. Besides those, he noted that some kind of space vehicle was flying beside him. Bird said that this vehicle escorted him. He had landed safely even though he had no control of his plane. Then, Bird landed on the ground and was greeted by the civilians that lived there. The beings that lived there called the place Agartha. Then, Bird and his crew were taken to the leader of that place, supposedly called Agartha. The leader, the master of Agartha, was described by Bird as delicate and ancient. Bird and his crew were told they'd been allowed to enter despite the invisible barriers. The leader of Agartha had said that ever since the US dropped atomic bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, their race had been very concerned for human safety and the planet's survival. The leader asked Bird to share this message to warn the civilization. After this, Bird noted that the beings there guided them to their plane and brought them to the outer world. Then Bird attended a meeting at the Pentagon. He was interviewed and recorded. He was ordered to remain silent, saying that he was a military man and must obey his orders. Then, after 10 years, Bird wrote again in his diary. He had noted, these last few years elapsed since 1947 have not been kind. I now make my final entry in this singular diary. I must state that I have faithfully kept this matter secret as directed. It has been completely against my values of moral rights. Now I seem to sense the long night coming on, and this secret will not die with me but as all truth shall it will triumphant, so it shall. This can be the only hope for mankind. I have seen the truth, quickening my spirit and setting me free. I've done my duty toward the monstrous military-industrial complex. Now, the long nights begin to approach, but there shall be no end. Just as the long night of the Arctic ends, the brilliant sunshine of truth shall come again. And those who are of darkness shall fall in its light. For I have seen that land beyond the pole, that center of the great unknown. What an extraordinary story from a very extraordinary man. You might believe the story, or you might not. It's all up to you. But its influence can hardly be argued. Djwal Khul, the esoteric Tibetan teacher, sent information from his location to Alice Bailey. Alice Bailey had been living in the United States. Then after some time, these two met personally. Even after his death, Bailey continued to receive information from this enlightened spiritual teacher called the Messenger of the Masters. After some time, DK confirmed that Bird traveled to Inner Earth as he claimed. Bird had noted a sun there in the Inner Earth, but not like our outer Sunday aurora borealis was not caused by this but by a different light source. The openings of the poles were wide enough for ships and planes to fly in it. He noted that there are entrances to the Inner Earth in many places such as Egypt, Tibet, Yucatan, Bermuda Triangle, and so on. Bird had noted that the governments of all countries know about this Inner Earth, but they are covering the information that the beings underground are UFOs. Dallas Thompson, a personal trainer in California, experienced an out-of-body death. He had seen bits of the Inner Earth. He wanted to be on the journey to the North Pole just as Bird did, hoping to find the entrance. In 2003, after months of planning his journey, he had diapered in a very mysterious way. Had some killed him? Corey Good had given details of the Inner Earth. He had claimed that there is a huge population living in Antarctica. He said that a disclosure would be an earth-shattering event but necessary. The Earth indeed has many mysteries.
Do giants exist? Or are they just another magical creature mostly a part of famous fairy tales? If they ever lived, how did giants go extinct? What story do they hold? President Abraham Lincoln visited Niagara Falls in the year of 1848. The president was so amazed by the beautification of Niagara Falls' natural wonders. He decided to write down some notes, saying, when Columbus first sought on the cross this continent, when Christ suffered on the cross, when Moses led Israel through the Red Sea, Even when Adam first came from the hand of his maker then as now, Niagara was roaring here. Did President Abraham Lincoln mention any giants? He noted, "The eyes of that species of extinct giants, whose bones filled the mounds of America, have gazed on Niagara, as ours do now." In the past, people wouldn't stop talking about unnaturally large skeletal remains found in the ancient burial mounds scattered across North America. This is all that people spoke about during the 19th century. However, this changed completely. Today, not a single soul mentioned ancient giants or even past discoveries. Do you think that if a skeleton is discovered somewhere nowadays, would it be hidden from the public? Because the 19th and early 20th were completely different times. People didn't find it weird to talk about skeletons of giants. Every day there were at least a few newspaper headlines starting the discovery of ancient giants. A newspaper that wrote many articles about the findings of giants was the New York Times. What did the reports say? Let's find out one by one. In the year 1882, an article was written with the title "The Bones of a Giant Found" by the New York Times. The report said, among the relics of the mound builders in the Red River Valley, a skull of heroic size and singular formation has been discovered. There were found the bones of about a dozen men and women mixed with the bones of various animals. The skull was the only perfect bone. Near those bones, there were also found some abnormally large body bones. It is believed that the man who bore was a giant. It was said that the Historical Society would investigate the mound where those bones were found. Then, years later, in 1885, another article took place. It was said that a small mound near Homer got opened by some schoolboys. What they found is extraordinary. They found 4 giant skeletons several feet below the surface of the earth. A further search was done, and it was found that the bones of the skeletons were 7 feet in length, and one of them was only 8 feet in length. The New York Times newspaper wasn't the only one that had written about these skeletons of giants. The San Antonio Express had published a report titled, "Beach Giant Skull Unearthed by WPA Workers Near Victoria." Giant skeletons were found, and it was believed to be the largest ever seen in the whole world. The report told the world about a giant skull that was twice the size normal of human head size. It was found unearthed on a mound in Victoria County. The pieces of the skeletons found in the mound were reconstructed in the WPA laboratory under the supervision of physical anthropologists. The research was made to determine whether this massive skull belonged to a man of a tribe of huge men, or if the skull was of an abnormal member of a tribe, or if it was a case of gigantism, since several large humans' bones were found at that site. The articles didn't seem to stop. Years later, in 1897, the New York Times had some news. A new article. The 3 mounds recently discovered in the town had been opened, and people had found a skeleton of a man of gigantic size. The bones were measured and were 9 feet from head to foot. The bones were in a fair state of preservation. Some finely tempered rods of copper and other relics were lying near the found bones. The area, the mound from which these were found, is 10 feet high and 30 feet long. However, another incredible article was written by St. Paul in 1904. It was said that in Nevada, workmen engaged in digging gravel and found bones of a human skeleton that were 11 feet high. Then, without wasting time, Dr. Samuels examined the bones and pronounced them to be bones of a man who must have been nearly 11 feet in height. People were excited to hear about those discoveries back in the old days. This news wasn't hidden from the public, unlike today's findings. However, these stories were written only in North America. A new article took place in Mexico. The article was about Charles Clapp, who had recently come back from Mexico. He had been in charge of Thomas W. Lawson's mining interest. He has called Professor Agassiz and told him about a breathtaking discovery. He had found about 200 skeletons of men. Each of the bone skeletons was above 8 feet in height. The cave was believed to be the burial place of a race of giants. The man arranged the bones of one of the skeletons and found out that the total length was 8 feet 11 inches. The femur reached up to his thigh, and the molars were big enough to crack a coconut. The head was measured to be 18 inches from front to back. There are articles written in Europe too. In 1892, an article written by the London Globe shared the discovery of a race of giants in modern-day France. In Tomboules of Castelnau, human bones of enormous size were found. The bones were double the size of the ordinary ones. Professor Kaoner had carefully examined these discoveries. He had said that the bones are those of a very tall race. He found them abnormal in dimensions and made the world question giants. There are endless newspaper articles which you can learn a lot from. But the most strange thing about this is that today, scientists and archaeologists pretend that this never even happened. Why does nobody talk about giants anymore and the past discoveries? Another important article to note is the article titled, "When Giants Roamed Earth." What does it say here? This article talks about the historical discoveries of giants. The story goes way back to the Roman Empire of the 19th century. It said, the past was more prolific in the production of giants than the present. In 1830, there was one of these giants exhibited at Rouen. This giant was 10 feet high. Then, Galliber was brought from Arabia to Rome in the time of Claudius Caesar. They were of the same height. Phantom, the one that had lived at the same time as Eugene II, was 11½ feet in height. Then, a giant was found with 60 teeth and was not less than 15 feet high. Then, the giant Fergus, who, according to the reports, was 28 feet high. Then, in 1814, a giant tomb was found, which was not less than 30 feet high. In 1590, near Rouen, a skeleton was found whose head held a bushel of corn. This was 19 feet in height. In 1632, in the castle in Dauphine, a 30 feet long tomb was found. However, France is not the only one where giant skeletons were found. Giant skeletons have been unearthed. In 1516, in Sicily, the bones of a skeleton were found 30 feet high. Then, near Magrano, skeletons of giants were found too. Each tooth of this giant skeleton weighed 5 ounces. All of those discoveries were public all around the world. Everyone knew about this. These discoveries were taken and put in museums and historical institutions. However, those discoveries disappeared after some time, and nobody seemed to talk about them. The breathtaking stories vanished. We could easily make a map with all the giant skeletons found in North America. It's crazy how many were found. However, it makes us question, where did all of those discoveries go? Where are they now? All of the findings ended up in the Smithsonian Institute. Many might know that they are very good at covering discoveries made worldwide. Some reports said that the Smithsonian purchased giant skeletons excavated by citizens. However, they disappear, never seeing them ever again. The Smithsonian had a division for exploring ancient mounds and giant burials. The Smithsonian also holds the discovery of the famous giant in San Diego in 1895. It was an 8 feet 4 inches tall mummified giant. There was a photo of the giants that was published in many newspapers. Many scientists took a closer look at the mummified giant. Then, after his inspection, it was purchased by Smithsonian. However, years later, in 1908, while the mummy was being exhibited, The Smithsonian ran some tests. They dismissed it as a hoax, saying it was made from gelatin. Is that possible that after spending so much time looking after this mummified giant, which acquired money and was carefully inspected by experts, it be a hoax? Do you think there is much more to this story than it has already been told? If this was a hoax, a life, then is it just a coincidence that every culture and religion tells stories of ancient giants who roamed the earth? The Sumerian civilization, which had begun in 6000 BC, tells more about the giants. It tells about a race of giants who ruled over the Sumerians. Luckily, there are many depictions of them. Who was this ruler? Who was the king? According to the Sumerian records, the ruler was a giant king that went by the name Gilgamesh. It is believed that Gilgamesh ruled for 126 years. This creation is seen as a historical figure by scholars. Does this confirm the existence of other figures associated with him? There are a lot of depictions of giants in ancient Egypt. The Egyptian records describe the old pharaoh dynasties as a race of tall giants. A very unusual story was found, which had the title, Prehistoric Egyptian Giants. What did this story say? In 1881, when Professor Timmerman was engaged in exploring the ruin of an ancient temple of Isis on the banks of the Nile, he opened a row of tombs in which prehistoric Egyptian giants were buried. The skeletons were examined. The skeletons were measured to be 7 feet 8 inches in length and the most significant to 11 feet 1 inch. However, no record hinted that they were in the memory of men of extraordinary size. The tombs date back to 1043 BC. In 1988, the German newspaper came with the news too. An entrepreneur named Gregor Spory took one of the most extraordinary photos ever taken. He took a photo of a mummified giant finger. The mummified giant finger was found in an undisclosed tomb, and it was nearly 14 inches long. Does this mean that this finger might belong to someone about 15 and 16 feet tall? The finger owner had a certificate that said that the finger was authentic. It also had an X-ray. However, when Gregor returned to Egypt and wanted to purchase the mummified finger, the owner disappeared. He was nowhere to be found. All that was left were the pictures of the mummified giant finger. Even the book of Genesis tells us about an ancient giant race called the Nephilim. However, the story of this race is elaborated later in other scripts. It was elaborated in the book of Enoch. It was said that the Watchers, who were fallen angels, interbred with the women on earth. This is believed to say that the race of giants, the Nephilim, was born. Those manuscripts had described the Great Deluge, which was a massive flood. However, according to scientific data, this had happened. If this story was real, why wouldn't the Nephilim be real? However, the stories about the giants don't stop there. There are stories that the North Americans tell. There are stories about the ancient giants that used to rule North America. There were brutal wars between the Native Americans and the giants. It is said that the tribes had to unite together to fight something, to combat the so-called red cannibalism. They fought them till they disappeared forever, till they went extinct. A lot of massive megalithic structures around the world can finally be explained. The huge stairs and stones. It makes us think that the giants surely built them. The perfect example of this is the Stone of the South at Baalbek, Lebanon. This weighs 1242 tons. Then, a massive wall made of huge granite stones was found on Mount Cheria in the southern Siberia. These massive granite stones are believed to weigh more than 3,000 tons. They were double the size of the ones that were in Lebanon. It makes us wonder, who had built these? The only answer is the giants that had lived years ago. Another interesting fact is that the original name for Stonehenge was the Giant Dance, or the Giant's Ring. However, Stonehenge is a later Saxon name that translates to the hanging stones. Celtic mythology also talks about the giants, starting even from the Hindus, Buddhists, Norse, and even in the Japanese Shinto folklore. It might sound unbelievable, but luckily there is a video that shows an old military parade in Imperial Japan in which the Japanese proudly showed a huge giant. This giant was the last member of a giant race called Cha-Cha. It was said that they lived on an island called Hahashima. Flavius Josephus, a 1st century Jewish scholar and historian, noted, for which reason they removed their camp to Hebron. And when they had taken it, they slew all the inhabitants. Until then, the race of giants, who had bodies so large and countenances different from other men that they were surprising to the sight and terrible to the hearing. The bones of these men are still shown to this very day, unlike to any credible relations of other men. When the Spanish discovered the coast of the Americas, the lives of giants were cited. Many Spanish ship captains said they had seen these taller people than ordinary native people. What did the captain say about these massive creatures? Captain John Smith had noted, "The Susquehannocks are a giant-like people. They measured the calf of the largest man's leg and found it 3/4 of a yard about, and all the rest of his limbs were in proportion." Alonso Alvarez de Pineda was a famous explorer. In 1519, he was mapping the coastline of the Gulf Coast. He marked the various rivers, bays, landmarks, and potential ports where the river empties into the Gulf of Mexico. He came across something extraordinary. He had found a town. He claims that he had seen 40 native villages. What kind of villages were they? What kind of people was living there? The Spanish explorer had said that he had seen giants residing in those villages. He also noted that a race of tiny pygmies was also living there. The Spanish explorer had described the giants, saying that they were from 10 to 11 palms in height, and the race of pygmies were only 5 or 6 palms high. However, the most exciting tale of giants in the age of exploration began with an account of the great Portuguese explorer Ferdinand Magellan. Magellan began his most famous journey, a bold expedition to search for an excellent route to the Maluku Islands, East Indies. This journey resulted in the first successful circumnavigation of the globe. He was given the command of 5 vessels. His journey took him across the ocean to the land of Patagonia at the southern end of South America. As Magellan had traveled and explored around, he had kept a diary with himself. Let's see pieces of his diary. Magellan had noted, as they were leaving that place, they finally reached 49½ degrees toward the Antarctic Pole. Just like it was winter, the ships entered a safe port to winter. They had passed 2 months in that place without being able to see anyone. One day they suddenly saw a naked man of giant stature on the port shore, dancing, singing, and throwing dust on his head. Magellan had sent a crewman to approach the giant and do precisely as the giant was doing, telling him that he had come in peace. The man led the giant to an islet in the presence of the captain general. When the giant was in the capital general's and our company, he marveled greatly and made signs with one finger raised upward. The giant had believed that Magellan and his crew had come from the sky. The giant was so tall that the team reached only his waist, and he was well proportioned. We must consider that those phrases were taken from the journal of the official chronicler of Magellan's voyage of discovery. He is a person that is above all others. Magellan was tasked to keep recordings and writings of what he had seen or done during his journeys. He had kept the most accurate records of events. He was responsible for what he claimed to see to the king and the country itself. What do you think? Could his man life of what he had said? Then, years later, Hernando de Soto, an explorer, claimed he had face-to-face contact with giants during his journeys in the United States. He had set out from Tampa Bay, Florida, with hundreds of men. During their adventures, they came across a tribe of natives that giants ruled. One of them was a hulky giant who was encountered in western Alabama. It was said that he towered over all others. The reporters of great explorers don't stop here. Hernando de Alarcon was trying to find a river. This river could be used to move supplies to Spanish troops along the coasts of California and Mexico. His journey took him to the Colorado River and the Grand Canyon. He had claimed that he and his crew came across a tribe of 200 giant warriors. It was believed that the giants were very aggressive. However, the team tried to make them less aggressive by giving them gifts and other stuff. Francisco Coronado also said he had contact with giants during his quest throughout the Southwest. He was in search of the legendary El Dorado. Bernal Diaz del Castillo, who served under Hernan Cortes during the Spanish conquest of Mexico, had pages of his detailed record of the win and subsequent collapse of the Aztec Empire. He had also mentioned tribes of giants. What did he write? What did he say about the tribes of the giants? Bernal Diaz del Castillo noted, they said that their ancestors had told them that very tall men and women with huge bones once dwelt among them. But because they were horrible people with wicked customs, they had fought against them and killed them, and those who remained had died off. And to show us how big these giants had been, they brought us the leg bone of one, which was very thick and had the height of an ordinary-sized man. And that was a leg bone from the hip to the bone. I measured myself against it, and it was as tall as I am, though I am of reasonable height. They brought other pieces of bone of the same kind, but they were all rotten and eaten away by the soil. We were all astonished by the sight of these bones and felt certain there must have been giants in that land. There were a lot of reports that showed us more about giants, but somehow all of these stories are forgotten. But they can't wholly be overlooked, as they are written in stone. There is a big giant footprint in South Africa. It is the most breathtaking footprint in stone ever found. There are a lot of huge stone footprints all around the world, but none like the one in South Africa. It has become one of the most controversial archaeology and geological research sites. The footprint is about 4 feet or 1.3 meters in length. This footprint is known to the locals as the print of the god. However, the skeptics rejected the giant footprint, saying that natural forces created it. But Professor Peter Wagner from the University of Port Elizabeth had said, there is a higher probability of little green men arriving from space and licking it out with their tongues than being created by natural erosion. However, there is one story left that is worth mentioning. An encounter with a giant that didn't happen in ancient times, but in the year 2002. A witness came through and told their story. The story takes place in the desert of Afghanistan, where US Army squad went missing. The crew went out there hoping to find the missed Army squad. They had walked mountains until they arrived at a large cave. Outside of that cave, there were blood and US arms in pieces. A redhead giant came out and began to fight the people out of a given. A man had died, but the others managed to put the giants on the ground by gunning him. When the force went into the cave, they saw that the missing people were there, dead. The giant's body was put on a helicopter and sent to a secret location in the US. Then, just a few years ago, another giant creature was caught on camera in Portugal. These are just a few that were seen, but what about the others? Is it possible there are still giants somewhere far from us, hiding from humanity? What do you think? Where could they be?
The world is a place full of unsolved mysteries. Humans have achieved a lot in science and have grown over the years, but we remain clueless about many things around us. The strangest and most beautiful thing about the earth is the oceans. The endless oceans. Our oceans are home to many myths and legends. Starting from hidden treasures, mystic ships, and even lost cities. On top of the list is the lost city of Atlantis. Is it hard to believe that an advanced civilization existed on Earth over 10,000 years ago but somehow vanished? Is it possible that such a civilization could be forgotten? Have you ever wondered where Atlantis really was? What must have happened? If the story of Atlantis is true, then it must be a geographical location, right? One of the oldest and greatest mysteries of the world is the lost city of Atlantis. Atlantis has been a topic of debate for centuries. It was first mentioned by the ancient Greek philosopher Plato endless years ago. Plato noted, the names of these first inhabitants have been preserved, but their deeds have perished on account of the catastrophes that befell those who succeeded them and the long passage of time intervening. Those of their race who survived these successive destructions were, as I said before, left as illiterate mountain people who had only heard the tradition of the name of the rulers of their country and beyond these only little of their deeds. Now, they were pleased to give their descendants the name of those rulers, even though they were unaware of their ancestors' virtues and institutions except of some dim legends concerning each of them. Then, for many generations, these survivors and their children lived in distress for their survival and gave thought to their needs. They spoke only for supplying these needs and had no interest in the distant past events. Based on what Plato said, we can indeed say that the people forgot their past and the only way this history lived was through myth and legend. But the world has some questions. Where could this city be? Some had suggested that the Antarctic is where the Atlantic is resting. Then, there is also speculation that this city rests at the bottom of the Atlantic Ocean between Europe and the Americas. But, then, some say that the Bermuda Triangle, the Caribbean, was this city's original location. But, no consensus has ever been reached on where Atlantis once existed. So, where could it be? For centuries, the debates among scholars and historians about where the city could be were endless. That's why the story takes place in the Richat structure, also known as the Eye of Sahara. Once again, it is a site that could very well be the location of the lost city of Atlantis. The Eye of Sahara was relatively unknown to the world until the 1980s. The Eye of Sahara, the Richat structure, is a remote geological formation located in Mauritania, Africa, in the middle of the desert. The Eye of Sahara has breathtaking beauty from its unique physical features. It is an amazing geological wonder. The formation contains rocks that are at least 100 million years old. Some of the rocks date back before the appearance of life on Earth. Crazy, right? Based on Plato's description of the lost city of Atlantis, the Eye of Sahara, it is believed to be the best candidate for the original location. But, to understand more about this amazing discovery, we must go through some important topics. We must know who Plato was. We must decipher what Atlantis is and what the Richat structure is. We must compare the description of Plato with the Richat structure. We can begin to connect the dots. But before we start, what is Atlantis? Over 10,000 years ago, Atlantis was the seat of power that the Atlantean people once held. It is said that the Atlantean people lived on a mighty island with very distinct geological features. Was this legendary city sunk by the gods for their impunity, losing all of its secrets to the endless sea? Atlantis is believed to have had an extremely powerful military civilization, a vast navy, and a strong merchant class. Who ruled Atlantis, and what were they like? It is believed that the rulers of Atlantis were loving and kind. The rulers of Atlantis were good to their people. Some say that the Atlantean civilization was even more advanced than we are today. It is said that they knew the secrets of anti-gravity and had contact with extraterrestrial civilizations. Some said that even the city of Atlantis itself was an extraterrestrial colony on Earth. But there was no point in breaking down these arguments. Many believe that all of this was just a story, a myth that Plato created inside his head. Even if it wasn't fiction of his imagination, it was a mash of ideas and representations of contemporary and historical civilizations during his time. It makes us wonder. Is there any evidence contributing to the theory that this city existed? Was Atlantis a real powerful nation? Was it swept in the depth of the sea, erasing its legacy from the human psyche? To help us understand more, we have Plato. Plato was an ancient Greek philosopher that lived almost 500 years ago. One of the greatest philosophers to have ever lived on Earth. Plato was a student of Socrates, the teacher of Aristotle. Plato was admired in his time and was an influential figure in literature and history. Plato has also written a lot of books. Two of Plato's books are the dialogues The Critias and Timaeus. This is where the modern understanding of Atlantis was formed. Throughout this dialogue, Plato described the empire and city of Atlantis, the people that lived there, and their society. Plato even gave a detailed description of the geography of Atlantis. starting from its structure, its history, and then the terrible destruction. The notes and the writings of Plato were passed down for 6 generations. They were passed down for generations from his relatives, Solon. Who was Solon? Solon was an Athenian statesman and lawmaker. He was known for his work on injustice and corruption reform. Everyone knew Solon because of his strong personality and morals. Solon had received the information about the people who had lived in Atlantis. He visited a temple on his journey to Egypt and had the Egyptian priest science translate the story from the hieroglyphs. Then, Solon took the translations and went back to Athens. The notes and the translations were kept in his family. Then, after some time of studying them, Plato published them. They were the dialogues of Cretias and Timaeus. Plato learned a lot about Atlantis from Solon's translated notes. He learned that Atlantis was a seafaring society with a capital city built in the form of concentric rings of water and land. It was 2 of land and 3 of water. Atlantis was a huge city, over 20 kilometers in width, and had mountains to the north. In the center of the island, the city had fresh water. Atlantis was ruled by a king named Atlas. Plato learned a lot about this city. He learned that this city was swallowed in the sea in a day. The city's destruction happened 9000 years before Solon's visit, which was 2600 years ago. Were animals in the city of Atlantis? Had Plato written anything about that? Yes. There was. Throughout the dialogues, we learn that there were animals on the island. Plato and Solon were known as a man of honor and honesty. Can we believe that or all of this story is just from their own imagination? What if the accounts of Solon as translated to him by the Egyptian priests didn't happen at all? Or is it possible that our perceptions of the past are faulty? Is history as we know it? Because if it is said that the destruction of the city happened 12,000 years, then it is believed that all of the notes and evidence would be in the depth of the sea, together with the city. It wouldn't be able to be found. People believe that we would find clues and evidence if the city ever existed. If the humans didn't find any clue, this should be just a myth, a legend. Myths were simply stories made up to explain things that people didn't understand. Do myths ever turn out to be true? However, there are examples of history that have been labeled as myths. Like everyone, you might hear about Homer's epic poems, the Iliad and the Odyssey. They tell the story of the Trojan War. It's where Greeks used the famous Trojan horse. It was used to defeat the Trojans. But this story was believed to be a myth. It is believed that no such war has ever taken place. The city was rumored to be true but didn't exist. But, in the year 1822, a businessman in Turkey was able to locate the city, Troja, and began archaeological digs. When the people located the place, they went there and began to look for clues. The layout of the city and the physical damage on the walls that were found in that location made the human think that the story was true. The famous Trojan War might have happened. The most exciting part of this story is that the poems of Homer were passed down orally for centuries before ever being recorded. It was labeled as fabrication until proof of its existence came to light. Another famous myth is the tale of Aurora. The Solomon Islanders told this tale. The story goes this way. A man who, after his wife, decides to elope with another man on an island named Tianamanu. The man decides to place a curse on the island. He brings the curse to the island in a canoe adorned with 4 wave murals. The man planted 2 taro plants on the island. But, he kept one for himself and grew it on another island. Then, the man's plant began to sprout out and caused disasters on the island. The man was watching over a mountain and noticed that as the plant was growing, it would cause the waves to come at the island and make it sink. It was believed that this story was just a myth, but later on, what happened was said to be true. It was found out that the island of Tianamanu was sunk into the ocean, not from a series of waves sent from anger and curse, but from an undersea tremor. Underwater is the remains of what once was an island. Did this man make the island sink in from his jealousy? Did his curse make it sink? That's simply a no. But there was an island that was sunk below the ocean surface. Maybe the story got told by generations and has changed in detail. Had the same happened with the city of Atlantis? Orichalcum is a mythical material that was rumored to exist in the past. This material had many unique qualities that made it extremely valuable and sought after. It was malleable, non-oxidizing, and durable. It was believed that this material had a little bit of the color gold. It was such a beautiful material. Even Aphrodite had earrings that were made out of this material. But, according to the historical record, a material like this had never existed before. Then, on a random day, in 2015, something changed. A shipwreck was discovered in the Mediterranean, carrying ingots and jewelry made of mysterious materials. The material had all of the qualities of orichalcum. It turned out that that material existed. It turned out to be a high-quality brass malleable, non-oxidizing, and durable. So, this was just another myth that turned out to be true. Many things have happened that humans have no solid explanation for. For centuries humans forgot how to make concrete, develop indoor plumbing, central heating calculus, astronomical calculations, etc. All have been lost to time, only to be rediscovered years later. For example, the Roman Empire. Roman Empire used a concrete formula that made their concrete far more potent than any of our modern-day concrete. Unfortunately, the Roman formula was lost, never to be found again. No one can replicate it no more. Legends of materials such as flexible glass and others are thought to be myths. People had forgotten a lot through the years. But imagine if humans could forget about so much of its history in only the last 2,500 years, what else could they forget? So, the question is it possible that there are stories with no archaeological evidence to corroborate them yet that are connected to the actual events of the past? However, it is important to go over unrelated events in history, because they might just lay the groundwork for the case of the lost city of Atlantis. So, here is a recap of what we have and know so far. Myths that were thought to be nothing more than fables can be based on historical events. Actual events can be passed down orally for centuries and still be a reasonably accurate representation of events. Large-scale natural disasters can wipe out traces of human existence easily. Humans are good at developing sophisticated tools and science only to forget about them, leaving them to be rediscovered in the future. Incredible men Solon and Plato, known for their character, shared the details of the city of Atlantis. If you use all of these points, it might seem like there is a possibility that the city of Atlantis was actual. But, the most important questions are, did the details about the city of Atlantis match with the recut structure of the Eye of Sahara? Is there corroborating evidence that places Atlantis near the same area? These questions lead us close to knowing if the city ever existed and, if yes, where it is located now. But first of all, let's talk more about this recut structure. The recut structure is a geological formation in the desert of Mauritania in Africa. The locals already knew it, but it was officially discovered in the 1980s by astronauts on the Gemini 4 mission. The astronauts saw the formation as they buzzed overhead. The structure is called the Eye of the Sahara. It is named this way because of its unique geological shape. It is a massive circular shape made of concentric rings of hills and valleys in almost a perfect circle. If you take a look from a distance, it looks just like an eye. It is located nearly 400 kilometers or 250 miles from the coast of West Africa and the ocean. The Eye of Sahara's structure is so unusual that it has never been seen anywhere. Some believe that they are the remnants of a volcanic-induced crater. Not from an eruption, but a scar left from subterranean pressure wreaking havoc on the earth. The experts believe that this process had repeated many times, causing the concentric rings of circles. This shape makes the Eye of Sahara the possible candidate for the original location of Atlantis. The best way to know is to compare the geography and the details of the area corresponding to the details translated by Plato and Solon. What did Plato say about the geography of the city of Atlantis? Plato said, there were alternate zones of sea and land, larger and smaller encircling one another. There were 2 of land and 3 of water which were turned as if with a lathe, each having its circumference equidistant every way from the center. There is a strong correlation if you compare what Plato said with the physical characteristics of the recut structure. It is also the only natural formation that would probably match the description. The recut structure is big, and you might mistake it for rocky hills and valleys. You can't notice how big it is from the ground. How big is the Eye of Sahara? If you measured the outside rings of the concentric circles, you would get a measurement of 23.5 kilometers or 15 miles across a vast structure. When Solon translated the note, he described the size of the city this way: the circular island of Atlantis had a diameter of 127 stadia. Stadia. A word that not many can be familiar with. What is stadia? A stadia is a standard unit of measurement in the time of Plato. 1 stadia is equivalent to 607 feet. 127 stadia is equal to 77,089 feet. If you convert it to kilometers, you get 23.4 kilometers or 15 miles. That's crazy. This means that the measures perfectly match each other. The recut structure is not very accessible. It is ringed in the north by mountains and is open to the desert facing the south. Being in the desert means a featureless landscape surrounding the recut structure. However, a particularly flat rectangle plain is very close to the structure itself. Did the description of Plato say anything about the topography of Atlantis? Yes. Plato said, the country immediately surrounding the city of Atlantis was a level plain, itself surrounded by mountains which descended towards the sea. The mountains of the island of Atlantis were celebrated for number, size, and beauty. This part of the island looked south and was sheltered from the north. The city of Atlantis was known to have access to the sea from the south. We can see through the recut structure that there is something that looks like ancient water access. The most exciting thing is that the water at the Eye of the Sahara is saltwater. It's interesting knowing that this area sits at over 1,000 feet above sea level. Another interesting fact is that skeletons of whales have been found in this area. Those are enough evidence to know that this area was once part of the sea. The only part of the Richat structure that has freshwater is the center. But, in the other places in the area, you need to dig 400 feet to get access to freshwater. The city of Atlantis is said to have freshwater that had come from the center of the city at the behest of the god Poseidon. From what Plato had noted, we can clearly understand a well near the central Acropolis provided the city with fresh water. The god Poseidon found no difficulty in making special arrangements for the center island, bringing up 2 springs of water from beneath the earth, warm water and cold. The descriptions of Plato had started to match with the physical realities of the Richat structure. It is becoming more believable that this is the area where the city of Atlantis is. How is it possible that the notes written 500 years ago perfectly match natural formation in the middle of the modern world? All of this can't be a coincidence. Many skeletons and bones of animals had been found near the Richat structure. The remains of elephants have been found near the area. There were also artworks written on the walls, drawings of elephants in the cave near the Richat structure. But this is not a big surprise since Sahara used to be lush, fertile land for as little as 5000 years ago. This means that it is a definite possibility to have an abundance of animal and plant life in the area, including elephants and other large mammals. What is so unique about the connection between this animal, the elephant? Well, Plato had mentioned the elephant saying that there were significant numbers of elephants on the island. This is one of the many things that distinguishes the Richat structure from many other theorized locations for Atlantis. The Richat structure makes logical and historical sense that there would be elephants on the island due to their proximity to them. The Richat structure is just like any other desert. It has stones, and it's full of sand. But, there is a disproportionately large number of white, red, and black rocks. Another notable characteristic of the local geography is that Mauritania is a large producer of gold and other metals. It is interesting, because Plato wrote about the gold and the metal of the city of Atlantis. He had noted there was an abundance of metals, copper, and gold. The stone they quarried was white, another black, and a third red. Plato said that the city of Atlantis was constructed with white, red, and black stones. The descriptions of Plato match the Richat structure so precisely. But, is there any other evidence that might tell us that we are talking about the same area, but just many years ago? What happened to this city? Why did it fade from the face of the earth? What had Plato said about this? Plato had said that the city of Atlantis got destroyed because the gods got angry at the people who lived there. Plato said that the people had become greedy, petty, and morally bankrupt. Plato said that the gods had had enough and couldn't continue that way. Then, the gods sent earthquakes and volcanoes that caused the island to sink into the sea. Plato said, in a single day and night of misfortune, the islands of Atlantis disappeared into the depths of the sea. Atlantis is part of the Atlantic that is no longer accessible by ship. This was one of the most important and most exciting things that Plato had noted. The entire city of Atlantis was wiped into the ocean's depth in just one night. As we know now, based on the island of Tiaminamu, islands can indeed be sunk in just one night by natural causes. However, is there evidence of a disaster of this magnitude in the historical record? What do you think? Getting to know on what date the city of Atlantis was sunk it's essential. We all know that Solon had lived 2600 years ago, and when he was told of Atlantis, the records of the Egyptians claimed it happened 9000 years before. The city's destruction might have occurred approximately 11,600 years ago. What do you think? What did the planet look like? How were the world and the people 11,600 years ago? Some say that this time was when the hunter-gatherers were slowly starting to settle and begin farming the land. Did anything else happen around this time? The Younger Dryas, the turbulent period at the end of the last ice age, ended 11,600 years ago. This process was unusual in so many ways. The hotties of the sun were rapid up to 10 degrees Celsius in a matter of mere decades. Also, the sea levels rose drastically in a short time. There was also a mass extinction in North America, where 35 species of large mammals died off along with the Clovis culture of Native Americans. But, the question is, what caused these unusual and turbulent events? It is believed that there was an enormous asteroid impact in the northern hemisphere, causing massive ice water melting. It is said to happen scale fires and a shock wave that could be felt worldwide. Luckily, there is evidence to suggest that a giant asteroid or meteor impacted the Earth near Greenland around that time. This process would send a tidal wave hurtling across the Atlantic as ice sheets would evaporate and spew superheated steam into the atmosphere. Then, the water would flow into the ocean, drastically disrupting the ocean currents by introducing unfathomable amounts of freshwater to their current flows. The climate would be affected, and this change would last for decades. The sciences suggested that meltwater changed the ocean cycles. This led to a period of global warming. Is it possible that an asteroid impact from so far away caused the end of the city of Atlantis? Could one night of earthquake and fire put a whole city under the depths of the sea? Is there evidence of this conclusion? The amount of water that an asteroid impact is hard to fathom. We can look at the Richat structure from a distant view and see if it seems like an area that could be washed away from a giant wave. If the landscape surrounding the Richat structure tells a story, it is that of a sudden flood that flew over the land. But the Richat structure might have gone through another volcanic shift. It is possible to cause the entire island to fall into the ocean. Was this phenomenon what it was described as the gods getting angry? You might ask why we are talking about the Younger Dryas. But the Younger Dryas impacts the theory and the date of the destruction of Atlantis. If the Younger Dryas impact was strong enough to alter the Earth's climate drastically, why not be the possibility of putting a whole city underneath the sea? Something else is important to note, the Göbekli Tepe. Göbekli Tepe is the oldest temple ever to exist. This temple was built over 12,000 years ago in Turkey. The construction of this temple is unique and the people thought that the hands of humans did not create this. But if people were so wrong about the date of these constructions, what else could they be wrong about? The Göbekli Tepe was buried on purpose. Why would someone bury a temple? Could it be that the locals who had built this temple saw all the things happening to the world around that time and wanted this temple to be safe? Could it be that this was why they had buried it? The locals might have wanted to return to this place once they knew it was safe. However, the story of the city of Atlantis is even dated even before Cretius and Timaeus. Herodotus, known as the father of history, had lived between 484 and 425. He has gathered historical and geographical knowledge of all civilizations known to the Greeks. Then, this was used for the construction of a detailed map showing parts of Europe, Africa, and Asia. On that map, we could see where the Atlantis was, which in the modern day it went by the name Mauritania. This map was used to say that it was the most accurate map. He was known and was respected and honored by everyone. Could a man like him lie about an imaginary city? The place now known as Mauritania has a long and storied history, one of which is particularly relevant to the history of Atlantis. The first king of Atlantis was said to be a king named Atlas. Atlas was said to be the son of Poseidon. Now, the question was, who was the first king of Mauritania? The first king of Mauritania was Atlas. Was this a coincidence? It is just another piece of evidence that Atlantis existed in a place that now is called Mauritania. As Plato had said before, the names of these first inhabitants have been preserved, but their deeds have perished on account of the catastrophes that befell those who succeeded them and the long passage of time intervening. Those of their race who survived these successive destructions were, as I said before, left as illiterate mountain people who had only heard the tradition of the name of the rulers of their country and beyond these only little of their deeds. Now, they were pleased to give their descendants the name of those rulers, even though they were unaware of their ancestors' virtues and institutions except of some dim legends concerning each of them. Then, for many generations, these survivors and their children lived in distress for their survival and gave thought to their needs. They spoke only for supplying these needs and had no interest in the distant past events. The evidence that the Richat structure is the original place where the city of Atlantis had sunk is solid. Starting from the size of the area, the topography, the time frame of its destruction, its shape, and much more make it even more believable. As Plato said, this tale about Atlantis, though strange, is certainly true, having been attested to by Solon, who was the wisest of the 7 sages. Now we can look at the story of Atlantis not just as a myth but as a window of our past. Did you know that cancer is the second leading cause of death worldwide and over 10 million people die from it every year? Will we ever be able to cure cancer? Who is Dr. Sebi? While Western medicine was deemed incurable, many great men worldwide tried to alleviate the suffering of humanity by healing the body and treating all kinds of diseases. Who are these men? Starting with Royal Rife. It was said that this man had found the cure for cancer 3/4 of a century ago. Royal Rife had created a frequency machine that disintegrates bacteria and cancer cells. Secondly, Wilhelm Reich, who had created an organ accumulator device that cured hundreds of people from all sorts of diseases. These men tried to make the world a better place where humans would suffer less from diseases. They tried their best. However, these men paid harshly for their discoveries. Their amazing discoveries threatened the medical industry. The medical industry doesn't want to find cures for diseases because it threatens their trillions of yearly profits from cancer treatments. They want to profit from us, from people. Our diseases are their profits. What happened to these men? Were they able to save humanity? Royal Rife was sued. However, he had won his lawsuit. But unfortunately, Royal Rife's machine and discoveries were destroyed. After this, he was left bankrupt. Wilhelm Reich was also sued and put in prison. He had died there in a very mysterious way. Was he killed because he had found ways to make the world a better place? The irony. These important discoveries and organ accumulator device that could prevent diseases got destroyed too. There was nothing left. Just when you think that this stopped right there, another man unfortunately suffered in a very similar way, such as Royal Reif and Wilhelm Reich. This whole story is dedicated to that one man. Who is he? That man is Alfredo Darrington Bowman, or known as Dr.Sebi. He was a holistic healer and herbalist. Dr.Sebi had discovered a natural cure for AIDS and even cancer. However, he was sued, put in prison, then suddenly died. It is believed that Dr. Sebi was allegedly poisoned. Dr.Sebi had helped all the people around the world, including celebrities too. He helped Michael Jackson, Steven Seagal, Eddie Murphy, John Travolta, etc. Dr.Sebi had helped the famous rapper Nipsey Hussle and the singer Lisa Lopez. These two were so grateful to Dr.Sebi and wanted to express their gratitude. Nipsey Hussle wished to make an entire documentary dedicated to Dr. Sebi. He wanted to spread awareness of his healing methods and cures. He wanted that the whole world to know who Dr.Sebi was. Nipsey Hussle was about to fund the entire documentary. However, it didn't go as planned. Before the documentary was finished, the rapper Nipsey Hussle was found dead. He was shot multiple times. On the other hand, even Lisa Lopez worked on a documentary about her life and spiritual journey. In this documentary, Dr.Sebi played a considerable role. However, one day after Lisa Lopez met Dr. Sebi, she mysteriously got into a car accident and died. What a coincidence. What do you think? What's the story of this man called Dr.Sebi? Dr.Sebi was born in the year of 1933. Dr.Sebi was born in a small village in Honduras. Dr.Sebi became a machinist on a cargo ship and traveled worldwide when he was young. These years of his life weren't healthy. Dr.Sebi was eating all the time and became overweight. Years later, this affected him. Dr.Sebi began to have severe health problems. He had asthma, diabetes, impotence, visual impairment, and obesity. Dr.Sebi needed help. So, he went to the United States. He quickly discovered that the conventional medical treatment wasn't helping him. His conditions got even worse. Dr.Sebi didn't know what to do, so he decided to look for alternatives. He has heard about a man who knew ancient healing methods during his travels. This man's plans were based only on herbs and natural medicine. Dr.Sebi traveled to Mexico to meet this man, Alfredo Cortez. He told Dr.Sebi that he was dying, but he could help him. The man said to him that he needed to practice a 90-day fast. What did this mean? Dr.Sebi was not allowed to eat anything, but only to drink water. However, the man gave Dr.Sebi different combinations of natural herbs and occasional juice during this period. After this, he said to Dr.Sebi that he should start a vegetarian diet. He was forbidden to consume meat or any milk in this vegetarian diet. Dr.Sebi was cured entirely of his medical conditions when this process was over. This was an incredible transformation for Dr.Sebi, and he got very inspired. Dr.Sebi wanted to expand his knowledge of natural herbal medicine, fasting, and vegan alkaline dieting. He was inspired to help others in need, just like he was a time ago. Dr.Sebi had noted a saying from the Bible, "The herbs are for the healing nations." In Genesis, Ezekiel, and Revelation. You will not make a mistake in the first million lives. Dr.Sebi began the journey by cataloging all kinds of herbs, plants, and mushrooms. What was the best way to experiment with these herbs and plants? Dr.Sebi thought that the best way to experiment with these natural medications was with his own body. He even practiced various fasting methods. Dr.Sebi was self-taught. He examined methods from Africa, Central America, and the Caribbean. This experience led Dr.Sebi to develop his healing the alkaline diet called the African bioelectric cell food therapy. Dr.Sebi noted that the diseases arise from mucus formation within the different cells in our body. What does this mucus do? This mucus retrains the oxygen from reaching the cells. This causes them to deteriorate. Excess mucus buildup in the lungs, which causes pneumonia. On the other hand, the excess mucus in the pancreas causes diabetes. However, Dr.Sebi believed that the diseases could survive only in acidic environments. Dr.Sebi used this diet and various herbs to achieve an alkaline state. What does the diet consist of? Dr.Sebi's diet consisted of only alkaline fruits, grains, nuts, and legumes. Turmeric burdock, root linden, flower dandelion root, and many others were contained to create his herbal mixtures. Dr.Sebi also used different sea moss. What is sea moss? The benefits of sea moss are endless. Sea moss is excellent for boosting the immune system, and it provides the body with energy. It is used to sleep better and have healthier hair, nails, skin, and teeth. It helps with allergics, better mood, and mental health. However, the goal of Dr.Sebi's diet was to detox the organism and cellular and intracellular levels while also recharging the immune system. The benefits of the herbs used by Dr.CB have been supported by science. What are the physical, mental and spiritual benefits of fasting? Fasting is the most potent ancient healing method. One of the essential parts of the diet is spring water. To make the diet work, you must drink a lot of spring water, since the human body consists of 70% water. Dr.CB had successfully healed and helped many people in his born place. Then, he went to the US, where he started his company and sold herbal remedies and healed people. Many people reached out to him, and he had cured many Americans. This way, Dr.CB became famous. He was all over the news. People were wondering if this was too good to be true. Dr.CB didn't have a medical degree hanging from his wall. However, instead, he has had a certificate of healing. Dr.CB said, "We have complex things with science, but if we go back to God and use the herbs as God said, you can see just how simple it is." He had noted, Hippocrates established the principle of medical science by using herbs to cure diseases, then why the physician using the chemicals? Then, years ago, a doctor cured diabetes, asthma, and obesity in Mexico. What were his methods, you might ask? Even this doctor used the very same diet and herbs that Dr.CB was using. Dr.CB noted his diet and herbs that the package is intracellular chelation. I am removing plaque from the system. I am removing inflammation that is the base for all disease. In 1993, Dr. CB provided a medical affidavit showing that this method worked. A patient diagnosed with HIV was cured 2 months later. Humans worldwide were swearing that their lives were getting better and they were getting much healthier by his methods, all from its natural oral medicines. Dr.CB had become very wealthy and decided to create a healing village in Honduras with all of his money. He named it Usha after his oldest daughter. People from all over the world began to travel miles to receive treatment there. It had become a very popular place. This whole place was located in a very spectacular area surrounded by nature. The village had natural medicinal hot springs, which the patient could use steam baths, and bathing in thermal waters, which was a part of the treatments. Many people who got treated here had given interviews, such as a woman who said that she was diagnosed with colon cancer, then it had metastasized and became leukemia. Then, she said that she was diagnosed with an astrocytoma brain tumor after 3 months. The doctors in the US gave the woman only 6 months to live. The woman said that she had decided to come to the village. Days after she went to the village, she no longer had leukemia and her headache had stopped within 30 days. The woman said that she had lost a total of 102 pounds. However, another woman talked named Chiri Amar. She said that he had brain fog and fatigue. Her memory wasn't good. There was acne that was breaking out on her face. She said that just after some days of getting the treatments of Dr.CB, she instantly noticed good changes. Reasonable changes in her skin and her memory. Then, another person, Abelardo Guerrero, shared his story with the world. He told how his sister was diagnosed with lupus and everyone had said to them that she was not going to make it. He noted how Dr.CB had sent the remedies to his sister. Within 3 months, the girl was able to drive the car. Then, a girl named Asian Jah shared her story too. She said she was through no oxygen and suffered from chronic and severe respiratory diseases. The girl was living with 13 breathing treatments a day. She started cleansing. She noted how she had mucus coming out of her from everywhere on the first week of the retreatment. She started to feel better and decided to go off medications. She removed the diseases successfully. The girl said that she is in the perfect condition that she has ever been, saying that she doesn't even take Advil. Nor any medication. However, not everything went according to the plan. In 1988, in the United States, the FDA filed a lawsuit against Dr.CB. What was the reason? The reason was that Dr.CB was practicing without a license and it was said that he was advertising false. Everyone knew the fact that Dr.CB didn't have a medical license. However, it made the people wonder. Was he false advertising? He said he could cure cancer, leukemia, lupus, herpes, AIDS, and many other diseases in the ads he ran. Dr.CB was asked to provide one witness to each of the illnesses he claimed to have cured. The lawsuit was being held in New York. Dr. CB must have brought a certified document to prove that they had the specific disease. Then another document would be a different doctor, proving that the witness is now cured of the disease. What happened next? Could Dr.CB make it no matter what everyone was saying? Everyone following the case was shocked when 77 witnesses joined Dr.CB in court. They brought the required documents that proved that Dr.CB cured all of them. However, they didn't let Dr.CB go out that easily. They had questioned him for hours. Laboratories tested all of his herbal remedies. After some time, Dr.CB was found not guilty. The trial backfired, making him even more popular and even more wanted. Dr.CB began to work with celebrities such as Michael Jackson, which helped him overcome his obsession with morphine and painkillers. All of this was achieved from his African bioelectric cell food therapy. Dr.CB worked even with the celebrity Steven Seagulls, who had helped him with his 5-year chronic headache. Dr.CB thought that the lawsuits were over, but this was just the beginning. This didn't cause any problem, but only made him even more popular. Just as we spoke earlier about the famous singer Lisa Lopez, she was one of the most faithful patients of Dr.CB. Dr.CB had helped her stay away from alcohol and excessive smoking and helped her with depression. She used to say that Dr.CB opened her eyes and saved her. She talked about Dr.CB, saying, "This man has shared a lot with me. We looked at him as if he was a gift. It's fantastic to be in this place and around people like him." Dr.CB has a straightforward philosophy. He had said that we are not just physical beings. We are an entity with an energy source responsible for our physical well-being. Together with MTV, Lisa shared pieces of the village in her transformations. She wanted the world to know that it was a magical place where you could feel good in your own body. There are a lot of videos that show Dr.CB and Lisa. She tells the story of how she decided to reach out to him. She said that she went to Dr.CB and said to him that she smokes and drinks a lot of alcohol. She wanted to get the negativity outside of her body. Lisa asked Dr.CB about the ways that she could achieve these things. Guess what Dr.CB said? Dr.CB told Lisa that she should fast for 40 days and 40 nights, just like Jesus did. That's what Lisa decided to do too. She fasted all those days, and one night, at 2 a.m., she visited Dr.CB and told him that she was finished fasting. Dr.CB asked her what did she saw. Lisa said that she had seen God. Lisa was so happy that she felt better and spoke to Dr.CB that she would try so hard so the whole world could know about him. Lisa wanted everyone in the world who was not feeling happy and was feeling sick to reach out to Dr.CB. Many people wait for answers but never get them. Everyone deserves to be happy and healthy. However, Lisa wanted to make a documentary about her whole journey to achieve this. She would spend all of her days in the Usha village. She would travel back and forth. Unfortunately, life had other plans for her. One day as she came back from a meeting with Dr.CB, she got into a car accident and passed away. However, many believe that her car accident was planned so that she couldn't finish her documentary about Dr.CB. Who could have done this to her? Not only her but even the famous rapper Nipsey Hussle wanted to make a documentary about this. Unfortunately, even the rapper had the same fate as Lisa. He was shot to death. Were these two deaths just a big coincidence? Were these two people killed for trying to spread awareness of Dr.CB? Dr.CB was not safe anymore. The Attorney General's office sent undercover agents to pretend to be patients so that they could find any irregularities with Dr.CB's practices. They wanted to see Dr.CB making mistakes or anything like this so that he could be arrested. Then, in 2016, Dr.CB was arrested at the airport. What was the reason? Dr.CB was arrested for money laundering charges. It was said that he was carrying 37,000 in cash. All of the people who knew him denied the amounts of money laundering. It was logic. Even when Dr.CB was inside prison, his company made a lot of money. People bought his healing remedies. There was a way that could set Dr.CB free of the charges. A document from his company proving the source of the money he had held. The family members of Dr.CB were worried and they contacted the company to get the documents to get him out of prison. Then, the most strange thing took place. No one was responding from the company. Nobody was calling or trying to help Dr.CB. Dr.CB was a high-profile person and he deserved to get a court date set up for a hearing, but unfortunately, he didn't receive any court date and no bail was allowed. Dr.CB was held in prison and treated like a monster, not a healer. All he could do was wait. After some months that Dr.CB was held in prison, he had little chance to call his daughter. Dr.CB said something to his daughter. Something bizarre. He had told her that the people in prison were trying to poison him with the food that they were giving him. These were the last words of Dr.CB. He had said to his daughter that he was not touching the food. He was fasting. It's weird because even though Dr.CB was 82-year-old, he consistently showed that he was in a perfect health condition. However, in 2016, the authorities stated that Dr.CB had pneumonia and died in prison. After his death, the company that Dr.CB had created with his force, the company that didn't help him when he most needed it, did something even more terrible. They patented his name and stole his legacy. Remedies began to sell. But Dr.CB's wife and daughter had stated that the treatments were not the original ones. Even the consumers who have bought them indicated that they had had terrible side effects. The only advice from the family of Dr.CB is not to believe any site that goes under his name. They are all fake. They have taken something beautiful and pure and made it terrible. Whoever didn't want the human to live a healthy and happy life had made it. Dr.CB is forever gone. Sadly, the major newspapers didn't even mention his death. Why did this happen? Why did they want not to let him speak? Dr.CB had won the court. What was else to do? It makes us think. Who would pay for the endless medical drugs and chemotherapy if the world knew that we could cure cancer with fasting and vegetarian diets? No one. Were they afraid of this? Was all of this just because of money? Greedy. Dr.CB had noted, a society that keeps cures a secret so they can continue to sell medication for huge profits is not a real society, but a massive mental asylum. Nobody could have described it better than the man itself, Dr.CB.
The pyramids have been the subject of continuous investigation for more than a century. The area is home to the Great Pyramid of Giza, the Pyramid of Khafre, the Pyramid of Menkaure, and the Great Sphinx of Giza. Who had to build the pyramids? Do they hold secrets? On November 10, 1993, NBC published a documentary titled The Mystery of the Sphinx, with over 30 million viewers across the United States. This documentary was a detailed series of geological and seismic surveys conducted around the Giza Plateau between 1991 and 1993. A group of Egyptologists gave the information that John Anthony West led. What had John Anthony West and his team discovered? Their discovery stunned the audience. The new discovery concluded that the Sphinx was not 4,500 years old. It was noted to be much older. According to geological evidence, the Sphinx is over 1,000 years old, dating back well before the rise of Egyptian civilization. It is a vast expanse of unexplored tunnels and chambers underneath the Sphinx, stretching deep underground. This made the world wonder, what secrets could be hidden in these unknown depths? In that same year, Rudolf Gantenbrink, a German archaeologist, sent a small robot with a camera down a new 8 by 8 inches shaft within the Great Pyramid, hoping that they would find clues and answers. The robot crawled slowly for 200 feet. Then it reached a startling impasse. The robot with the camera appeared to be stopped by a door made of limestone or marble. The door seemed to have 2 copper handles on it. Copper was not found anywhere else in the Great Pyramid. This fact made the German archaeologist Gantenbrink wonder. It made him wonder if they were handles, or perhaps keys, or something completely different. But the essential question was, what was behind that door? The Egyptian authorities had said that the door was a hoax and banned the whole crew from exploring any further. Gantenbrink had offered the Egyptians to give authority over the robot and even train Egyptian technicians, just so they can operate the equipment and open the door. He wanted to know what stood behind that door. Dr. Rainer Stadelmann, the German Archaeological Institute director in Cairo, repeatedly said that it was not a door and that there was nothing behind it. Then, in the same year, Zahi Hawass, who was Egypt's chief inspector for antiquities, expelled John Anthony West and his team from the area after the broadcast of The Mystery of the Sphinx. Then, in 1955, West attempted to obtain a permit to resume exploration, but Hawass once again was there and denied the application. This was all over the news in the New York Times, saying, Zahi Hawass has obstructed us. John Anthony West noted this. John Anthony West was an American author and tour leader. However, Zahi Hawass was not alone in this. It was said that even the mafia was behind this, controlling research permits, suppressing new information, and, in the words of a petition signed by many thousands, hiding possible findings that could be of great importance to all members of the human race. But why? Why would Egyptian authorities obstruct significant research into its legendary wonders? Why do these pyramids have such great importance to all members of the human race? Is it possible that below the pyramids of the Giza Plateau is a history that predates ancient Egypt? There are a lot of unanswered questions. Those questions didn't start only with John Anthony West and Rudolf Gantenbrink. In 1817, the British Consul General to Egypt, Sir Henry Salt, and Giovanni Caviglia discovered something new. They found a large tomb in the Great Pyramid. This large tomb was found on the west of the Great Pyramid, and it opened up to a maze of subterranean passages. However, they weren't historians, so they had abandoned exploration of the passages. But stories of the existence of a subterranean underworld beneath the pyramids have existed for thousands of years. Stories told by travelers, historians, and even the prominent thinkers of the time. We must consider that even the ancient Greek legends had talked about a hidden above and below ground. This complex was said to be known as the Labyrinth. This complex was located at the Hawara Pyramid, 60 miles from Giza. What had the ancient Greek legends say? In the 5th century BC, Herodotus had noted, their ice salt well palaces regularly disposed of, which had communication with each other, interspersed with terraces, and arranged around 12 halls. It is hard to believe they are the work of man. The walls are covered with carved figures, and each court is exquisitely built of white marble and surrounded by a colonnade. Near the corner where the labyrinth ends, a pyramid, 240 feet in height, with great carved figures of animals on it, and an underground passage by which it can be entered. I was told very credibly that underground chambers and passages connected this pyramid with the pyramids at Memphis. Pliny the Younger was a Roman historian who wrote of a tomb deep below the Sphinx. How did he describe it? He describes it as the tomb of a ruler named Harmaches that contains an excellent treasure. A 4th century Syrian philosopher, Iamblichus, spoke too. He gave descriptions of an entranceway to a subterranean underworld through the body of the Sphinx. He had noted, this entrance, obstructed in our day by sands and rubbish, may still be traced between the 4 legs of the crouched colossus. It was formerly closed by a bronze gate whose secret spring could be operated only by the Magi. It was guarded by public respect, and a sort of religious fear maintained its inviolability better than armed protection would have done. In the belly of the Sphinx were cut out galleries leading to the underground part of the Great Pyramid. These galleries were so artfully crisscrossed along their course to the pyramid that, in setting forth into the passage without a guide throughout this network, one easily and inevitably returned to the starting point. However, those didn't sound like a labyrinth. Al-Masudi, historian and geographer, also wrote about the underground world. Then, an Arab writer named Daoud Lemseni recorded the existence of underground passages in a manuscript. Those are still being kept in the British Museum. Then, a British explorer named Andrew Collins said, ancient funerary texts allude to the existence of a subterranean world in the vicinity of the Giza pyramids. This is suggested to be true because of its name. In ancient times, Giza was called Rostu. What did Rostu mean? Rostu translated means mouth of the passages and the gateway to the duat, or the other world. Everyone might doubt that a whole underworld exists beneath the Giza plateau. But the most important question is, what is it for? Who had built this? A famous American psychic named Edgar Cayce, known as the Sleeping Prophet, created an interesting confession. In the 1930s, he claimed that he had a vision that the Sphinx was not 4,500 years old. Then, how old was it? Edgar Cayce noted that he had had a vision, and he was told that the Sphinx was over 1,000 years old. He had said that beneath it was the Hall of Records, which contained ancient knowledge and wisdom. It was said to contain the true history of the human race. Could we believe those, or were these the ramblings of a lunatic? What do you think? In the early 300 BCE, Cranor, a Greek philosopher, shared about pillars of stones that lined passageways under the pyramids. Then, the Roman historian, Ammianus Marcellinus, believed that the subterranean walls beneath the pyramids were designed to preserve knowledge through the Great Flood. Massaudi wrote in the 10th century and had noted, written accounts of wisdom and acquirements in the different arts and sciences were hidden deep under the pyramids. They might remain as records for the benefit of those who could afterward comprehend them. Then, he said, in his own words, I have seen things that one does not describe for fear of making people doubt one's intelligence. But I have still seen them. Christian Rosencreutz, the founder of the Order of the Rosicrucians, spoke of a secret chamber beneath the ground. He had noted that the Giza Plateau was filled with library books that contained ancient knowledge. It contained information that humans are not familiar with. It makes us wonder if such knowledge exists. Why would Egyptian authorities deny this existence? Why wouldn't they let us research and explore? What is the secret? There was a public publication in 1972 by Harvard University saying, no one should pay any attention to the preposterous claims regarding the interior of the Great Pyramid or the presumed passageways and unexcavated temples and halls beneath the sand in the Pyramid District. What if the records hidden beneath the pyramids revealed a pre-Egyptian culture, a timeline of history that shows that Egyptians were not, in fact, the builders of the pyramids? If this were why the Egyptian authorities didn't let anyone explore the pyramids, it would be understandable. Or could it have even darker reasons behind it? As the Australian author Tony Bushby said, a hidden level of censorship in operation. Could it be possible that the secrets of the pyramids go beyond a hall of records? In 2003, Sergio Gómez Chavez, an archaeologist with Mexico's National Institute of Anthropology and History, examine the damage that the rain had caused around the feathered serpent pyramid in the ancient region of Teotihuacan. The rain had opened a 3-foot wide sinkhole at the top of the pyramid. Humans had tied a rope to their waist and lowered themselves into the hole, hoping that they would discover something extraordinary. A perfectly cylindrical shaft was found leading to a closed-off passage with exceptional treasures. There were found crystals shaped into eyes, greenstone crocodile teeth, and sculptures of jaguars. However, this wasn't all that they had seen. At the end of the tunnel, the archaeologists found the most unexpected thing: mercury. Mercury is a scarce and conductive element. Today, we use mercury in electronics and automobiles. However, the presence of this dangerous substance made the scientists wonder. Ancient Hindu texts noted that liquid mercury was part of the propulsion system, which the gods had used for their flying chariots. It is not a big coincidence that liquid mercury was found in a temple built to honor Quetzalcoatl, the feathered serpent god that came down from the sky. Years had gone by, and Chavez used a radar device to create an underground map. This map contained an extensive collection of tunnels and chambers under the pyramid. Then, the Pyramid of the Moon and the Pyramid of the Sun, also in Teotihuacan, have had similar subterranean underworlds mapped using electrical resistance technology. The pyramids appear on every continent, and it makes us question how many of these pyramids have a similar subterranean world beneath them. How many more examples would humans find if we were allowed to explore them? In 2005, an extensive tunnel and chamber network was found beneath the Bosnian Valley of the Pyramids. Then, in 2014, archaeologists uncovered a hidden underground tunnel system running from the Peruvian city of Cusco to the Pyramid of Intihuatana at Machu Picchu. It makes us wonder, why are there similar pyramid structures with similar subterranean underworlds? In 1891, Nikola Tesla, a Serbian-American inventor, electrical engineer, and mechanical engineer, took the stage at a conference in New York City. He presented a lecture to the American Institute of Electrical Engineers. What did he do there? In each hand, he held a light bulb. They were not connected to any wires, yet they glowed brightly. Tesla had explained, saying that the electricity was being transmitted through the air. The electricity was transmitted from 2 large pieces of metal he had set up on either side of the stage. Nikola Tesla noted how one might increase the scale of this effect over a broader area, possibly even the whole world. After years of working, Tesla, in 1905, had completed the assembly of the 187-foot-tall Wardenclyffe Tower in Shoreham, New York. A root system held up this giant tower. Tesla had explained, saying, "In this system that I have invented, the machine must get a grip of the earth. Otherwise, it cannot shake the earth. It has to have a grip so that the whole of this globe can quiver." Tesla had the idea of pumping the planet with electricity. This way, it would intermingle with the natural telluric currents that move throughout the Earth's crust and oceans. The question is, what would this tower do? The tower would project energy skyward through its huge metal top into the electricity-friendly ionosphere some 50 miles up. Tesla believed that he could harness the energy lodged within the Earth and transmit it all over the globe. This would provide the entire planet with unlimited, free energy. So, in 1905, Nikola Tesla filed a patent in the United States titled "The Art of Transmitting Electrical Energy Through the Natural Medium." It was something extraordinary that would change everything. However, not everything went according to the plan. That same year, Nikola Tesla got abandoned by his financial backer, and the whole project collapsed into pieces. Who was Nikola Tesla's financial backer? Nikola Tesla's financial backer was one of the wealthiest people on Earth, John Pierpont Morgan. He had become rich by financing the captains of oil and industry. However, Nikola Tesla's unlimited energy plans have mostly been forgotten or suppressed. Were these his actual plans? We must consider that Nikola Tesla had always been fascinated by the Egyptian pyramids. He spent most of his life studying them, writing, and thinking about them. He had an obsession with the Egyptian pyramids. But the question is, why? Why was he so obsessed? In 1905, Nikola Tesla revealed a patent, including his unlimited energy device design. He had named it Tesla's electromagnetic pyramid. Why this name? If we compare this electromagnetic pyramid, the Wardenclyffe Tower, with the construction of the Great Pyramid of Giza, we can easily see that these two resemble. There was one time when the Great Pyramid was covered by an outer layer of white tuffle limestone, blocks that fit together so perfectly. White tuffle limestone is unique. However, it does not contain magnesium. These casing stones would have perfectly insulated whatever was inside the structure. However, beneath the casing stones, the pyramid is built on a different type of limestone. Another kind of limestone is known to increase its electrical conductivity. The pyramid's passages and their underground tunnels are lined with granite. This is very strange. Granite is one of the hardest stones to work with. Another strange thing is that there was no source of granite anywhere near the area. The 8,000 tons used in the pyramid must have been shipped there by boat from Aswan, 500 miles away. Did granite serve some specific purpose? Granite is also known to be radioactive. It is filled with quartz crystal, well known for piezoelectricity, like a quartz wristwatch that can be charged only by shaking it. What could these unusual materials used in specific situations mean? Giza Plateau sits on top of a system of underground rivers. Interestingly, it has been shown that thousands of years ago, the Nile River ran right past the pyramids. It makes us wonder, is there a possibility that the pyramids were built to harness the piezoelectricity of the currents of these rivers? A study got published just 2 years ago by an international research group. A study in the Journal of Applied Physics showed that the Great Pyramid could concentrate electromagnetic energy in its internal chambers and under its base. Had the humans begun to put the pieces of the endless puzzles together? How was this theory described as? The theory was described this way. The water from the underground rivers travels through the subterranean tunnels, up into the limestone through capillary action. Then, the pyramid's construction creates an internal 3D field of harmonic vibrations. This provides space to allow the energies to mingle within. The pyramid's apex creates a spin field within its center, and once power has entered, it careens off the 5 identical angles. It is projected in a beam towards the center, where a pillar of the fused vibrations occurs. On the other hand, in Tesla's Wardenclyffe Tower, the energy is drawn from the Earth and projected skyward. A gold cap topped the Great Pyramid. And as everyone might know, gold is one of the most electrically conductive materials on Earth. The gold top provided a path for electricity to shoot up into the ionosphere, like the 55-1 metal ball that topped Tesla's tower. The similarities between Tesla's plans for unlimited energy and the Great Pyramid's construction have led many to speculate that the Great Pyramid of Giza was an ancient power plant. A power plant to project energy could be harnessed at individual locations. Many were curious about the appearance of obelisks around the whole world. Obelisks were made of granite and topped with quartz. These obelisks could have acted much like Nikola Tesla would suggest antennas could, tapping into the energy conduit produced by the Great Pyramid. Another interesting fact is that Egypt is known as electrical through the story of Moses in the Bible. Moses was one of the Pharaoh's closest advisors, and he would have been privy to all the ancient secrets of Egypt. It could have been the secrets of energy if such secrets did exist. Many had said that the biblical Ark of the Covenant, described in the book of Exodus, was a gold-covered wooden chest containing the 2 stone tablets of the 10 Commandments, is a metaphor for the superconductor at the core of the Great Pyramid which powered ancient Egypt. Moses took the Ark of the Covenant with him when he fled Egypt, rather than having received the 10 Commandments from a mountaintop. Why did he do that? It was a possession that made Egypt great. Moses would have been pursued ruthlessly by the Pharaoh. However, this might just add a twist to the whole story of Moses. The story of Moses parting the Red Sea. It had made everyone wonder, what type of electrical wizardry could this be a metaphor for? Historical references show that during the reign of Ramses II, Egyptian civilization reached its peak, the pharaoh at the time of Moses, before collapsing shortly after that. However, some might believe that it is not that complicated. It might be said that the Great Pyramid is simply a tomb, which means that it has no secret purpose or metaphorical history. Many pyramids are believed to be so. However, the Great Pyramid does not contain things found in the other Egyptian tombs. There weren't found any extravagant artifacts or opulent wall art, no sealed entrances, and there were not even any mummies. If none of those things were found, then why was it there? What was the reason? Could it be that it indeed was a power plant? The oldest electric batteries known were found near Baghdad, Iraq, 2,200-year-old. Or, let's consider the ancient Egyptian carvings and art that appear to depict giant light bulbs like the ones found in the Dendar Temple. Gamblichus describes his experience in the underground tunnels below Giza. He had noted, "We came to a chamber. When we entered, it became automatically illuminated by a tube's light, the height of one man's hand and thin, standing vertically in the corner. As we approached the tube, it shone brighter. The slaves were scared and ran away in the direction we had come. When I touched it, it went out. We made every effort to get the tube to glow again, but it would no longer provide light. There are many types of strange stories around the Giza Plateau that have been commonplace for centuries. In the 9th century, the Egyptian governor Ahmed bin Tulun described a globe of glass discovered in a tunnel under the Great Pyramid. This was later found to be the same weight when empty as when full of water. Centuries later, Egyptologist Dr. Selim Hassan began to pump the water out of the chambers under the Giza Plateau. After 4 years of pumping, he realized that the water level had not descended at all. The water seemed to have had unusual properties around the Great Pyramid. The water should have been the key to a pyramid power plant. However, the most bizarre and interesting story is the one of Sir William Siemens. Sir William Siemens was a British inventor. He had climbed to the top of the Great Pyramid in the late 1800s. As he and his crew had reached the summit, they had noticed that something strange was happening. Every time they raised their hand with fingers spread, complaining of a shrill ringing noise would be felt in their ears. Sir William Siemens raised his hand and immediately felt a prickling sensation. After some moments later, he wanted to take a sip of wine. However, when he tried to do that, he received an electric shock the moment his lips touched the bottle. Then, he thought of an idea. He moistened a piece of newspaper and wrapped it around the bottle of wine. He wanted to create a makeshift Leyden jar, raising this primitive capacitor over his head. Sparks of electricity sailed through the air. Then, when someone wanted to grab the bottle away from Sir William Siemens, he pointed the bottle at the man in self-defense. And guess what had happened? The man was thrown to the ground and was unconscious. A solid electrical current was believed to emanate from the top of the pyramid. However, this remained unexplained for years. After this, it was no longer possible that anyone could climb to the top of the Great Pyramid. It had become illegal for purported conservation purposes. Is the Great Pyramid a power plant? If so, how were the ancients able to create such a thing? There are still many aspects that defy ancient explanations. Let's point out the most exciting and bizarre things about those pyramids. The 4 corners of the Great Pyramid align with the 4 cardinal compass points. How was this even possible? Knowing that the compasses had not been invented when it was built is strange. Then another exciting fact is that when standing directly in front of the Sphinx on the summer solstice, the sun sets precisely between the Great Pyramid and the Pyramid of Khafre. But how could the ancients know the date? The calendar year had not been determined when those pyramids were built. Then, let's talk about the complex mathematical equations and concepts used in the engineering of the Great Pyramid. How is it possible that equations like pi were used in building, knowing that this equation would not be discovered until thousands of years later? It has been concluded that whether a power plant or not, the Great Pyramid and many of the other pyramids across the world should have been impossible for the ancients to build. There are just too many unanswered questions. How were they made? Were they created by slaves, as some assume? Where did this knowledge come from? Edgar Cayce's thoughts could be examined for inspiration. The one who predicted the age of the Sphinx more than 50 years before science would prove him right. He had also claimed that a flying saucer was buried under the Great Pyramid of Giza. Maybe it is not as outlandish as it seems, right? Could this be true? Since many ancient carvings and cave etchings worldwide look like flying saucers, is this the secret of how humans had possessed such impossible knowledge? Was it brought to humans by a group of extraterrestrials? What do the ancient Sumerian X tell? The ancient Sumerian X represents the work of the dominant civilization in the area at the time the Sphinx was built. It tells the story of gods called the Anunnaki. However, some modern scholars have interpreted them as aliens visiting the Earth and intermingling with humans, bringing futuristic technology and incredible knowledge. Were Anunnaki the ones who had built the Great Pyramid? Maybe this explains the existence of similar pyramids with similar underground networks. Was this a sort of global power network set up by the Anunnaki? Another interesting fact is that the Sumerian X speak of Anunnaki as an underground place entered through a tunnel. Its entrance is hidden by sand and by what they call Huina, his teeth as the teeth of a dragon, his face the face of a lion. Is it possible that Anunnaki was the key to ancient knowledge long lost? Is it the key to a different understanding of human history? The answer is yes. However, the pyramids still hold secrets.